Really not going to happen on its own. Sorry, good to see you.
No problem at all. Good evening, everyone. This is the Puyallup City Council meeting for Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. I want to welcome everyone here. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, before we actually start the business of the council, I'd like to acknowledge any youth that we have in the audience. I see two young gentlemen here. We do this because, to be very frank, you're the future leaders of the city, and we want to thank you for being here. If you'd like to stand up, acknowledge who you are, perhaps what high school you're from, and if you're here for any particular reason, please state that.
I'm actually the student body president of Puyallup High School, and I'm here for my AP government class.
Thank you.
I'm Tyler Cox. I go to Puyallup High School, and I'm here for my AP Gov class. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. Any other youth out there? I don't want to disparage anybody by appearance if they look a little bit older than being in high school. So seeing none, let's go ahead and move on. I would like the approval of the agenda, please.
Second.
Okay, it's been
Mr. Mayor.
moved and seconded. All those in
Councilman.
favor?
We need to take roll.
Oh, pardon me. City Clerk, please take roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorr,
Present.
Councilmember Adler,
Present.
Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Whitting,
Present.
Councilmember Gilliam,
Present.
Deputy Mayor King. Present. Mayor Castema.
Present. Okay, but now let's move on. Do I hear a motion for the approval of the agenda?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to point number 2, consideration of minutes. And I would ask for approval of the March 12th, 2024 and the approval of the March 26th, 2024.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's passed. Now we're going to move on to presentations and proclamations. And we happen to have, and I think it's very obvious to those who are actually in the audience today, we have a big banner here in front of the dais that proclaims that we are in fact a tree city. And I have to tell you, for years, or at least years ago, there were some signs that would indicate that Puyallup was a tree city, but I guess we had fallen out of favor. But now we want to get back in favor of being a tree city, and we're actually putting some efforts to tree planting, et cetera, to make that true, because we see trees as being so important. And I'm going to read this proclamation, but I would like to have Julia Cast with the Department of Natural Resources and Brian Molman, if you could come forward. Okay, and I will read the proclamation and then you can go ahead and provide some comments, okay? Okay, whereas in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day called Arbor Day to be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate temperatures, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. Trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas from 2014, 2017, the city of Puyallup was recognized as a tree city by the National Arbor Foundation, which is a symbol of the city's dedication to the preservation of natural resources, in 2024, the city is recertified as a Tree City USA. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Puyallup City Council that we officially recognize April 23rd, 2024, ourselves as a tree city. You can applaud. I think it's worth it. I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Eyewitness thereof, I, Mayor Jim Castema, have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Puyallup. And I'll go ahead, let me deliver this to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Cast. I'm the Evergreen Communities Coordinator with the Department of Natural Resources, Urban and Community Forestry Program, which is quite the mouthful. I am here today to congratulate you on becoming a tree city again. I think that's fantastic, and I just want to give you all a round of applause one more time. And just for anyone who's unfamiliar with our program, we provide technical and financial and educational assistance to communities like yours across the state of Washington. Over the last year, I've had the pleasure of working with many of your staff, and they have worked hard to get reinstated into this program. So I think everyone should walk away feeling very proud of your staff and your leadership for creating space for this all to happen again. Tree City USA is a nationally recognized program with nearly 100 communities in Washington state and over 3,600 communities in the country. The Tree City Award symbolizes the importance or an important level of commitment and concern that you and your fellow residents have for the health of trees and quality of life in your community. You're receiving this award because Puyallup has achieved the 4 standards set by the Arbor Day Foundation. You've designated staff to care for trees. You've enacted a tree ordinance, which exists to ensure that the trees have protection in your community. Your community has also spent over $2 per capita on tree care, which is symbolic of your commitment to manage your urban forest. And you come together each year to celebrate Arbor Day and do an Arbor Day proclamation, arguably my favorite standard. This award does not mean that the work is complete or done. It's just getting started. This program is what you make of it. I really encourage you all to lean into this work and to continue leaning into it. It's more than just a plaque on the wall. It represents your commitment. I think the proclamation did a fantastic job of going over the importance of urban forests. But I just want to reiterate that they are a public asset, almost like a road or a utility. And with public assets, there's a need to continue investing in them with proper care and maintenance. In doing so, we maximize the return on your investment and cultivate safe spaces that are healthy and long-lived urban forests. Together, by taking care of our natural resources, we're growing a better community in Washington state. Our communities need trees, and we all need trees. Today, we're recognizing your city for your efforts to cultivate this healthy, thriving urban forest that will continue to benefit the people for many years to come. Thank you for your demonstrated efforts in growing, protecting, and celebrating trees in the city of Puyallup. I am pleased and honored to re-welcome you all to the Tree City USA program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also, I brought some fun Arbor Day patches and I'll leave them on the table over there in case anyone wants one.
Excellent. Thank you. Brian.
Thank you so much. As stated, my name is Brian Molman. I work with Pierce Conservation District as the Habitat Stewardship Program Manager. So I work directly with many folks in the city here to kind of help accomplish some of these goals. Pierce Conservation takes immense pride in our relationship with the city of Puyallup through the Green Puyallup Partnership. The partnership's goal is to build sustainable network of healthy, natural, open spaces for the benefit and enjoyment of current and future generations, bringing over 350 acres of Puyallup's open spaces into active restoration and maintenance. Under this plan, currently we oversee 5 active steward sites across Puyallup, which are monitored and restored through the dedicated efforts of volunteer habitat stewards and with crew interventions in slightly more rocky spaces. The steadfast support that we receive from the city is pivotal to our goal of revitalizing these open spaces. In 2023 alone, Pierce Conservation District, in partnership with the city of Puyallup, planted over 1,260 trees within the city around critical riparian space. And this doesn't even include shrubs, ground cover, all that stuff, but it's not the focus for today. The sum of those efforts was across more than 20 events over the course of 4 months during the planting season. But that's not it, right? We're looking forward to the future. As we look to 2024, our calendar contains numerous volunteer events focused on the continued restoration of our public steward sites. To date, we've completed over 11 successful volunteer events in 2024, with more than 37 scheduled through the rest of the year. In the first weekend of May, coming up here real soon, we've got 3 steward events coming up with Dead Man's Pond, Meeker Creek, and actually introducing the Peck property, which is a site that we've been working on since 2020 and can now progress to active volunteer steward management. We're gearing up to host 2 sets of habitat steward training, the first in May and the second in September, extending an invitation to all who want to eagerly engage directly. Pardon me. We look forward to the years ahead, collaborating hand in hand with the city of Puyallup to elevate a multitude of urban open spaces that you all have by planting trees and promoting healthy riparian habitat, serving both natural and built communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was wonderful. Well, we thank you for that partnership. It's very wonderful that we're now a Tree City. So let's move on to public comments. We have right now, I believe there are 5 people signed up, and we have a special treat after we're through with these 5 particular individuals. But let's start first. I'll have our city clerk read the guidelines for public comments. Dan, please.
Thank you, sir. This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names to speak in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Thank you. And just to repeat that 30 seconds before the 3-minute mark is up, Dan will go ahead and remind you of that. And I don't mean to be rude at all, but when you do hit your 3-minute mark, I will then ask you to wrap up your comments. It's very important that I give everyone the same level of deference in this comment period. So with that, let's have John Hopkins come forward first.
John Hopkins, District 1. Good job on the Tree City, and a shout out for Conservation District. If you want a tour of the building, it can be arranged. It's well worth it. It's a whole lot of fun, believe me. I'm here to talk about Christ Church. Thank you for the first reading. A couple of comments on that. It was a great presentation by staff. I think they did a phenomenal job. Staff is very competent, capable, professional. It is a wonderful group. So anytime in the past where I've hammered on development services, it certainly hasn't been personal. Regarding the windows, we had a question about the windows. The answer is $82,000. That's how much is being spent on the restoration of the windows at Christ Church. That's a lot of money for a tiny church. They'll look good. They'll be up this year. Next up is a question. Is it worth doing a historic remodel? I don't mean a listing like this. This is obviously worth it, but doing a remodel. Well, first you got to get past the public perception that, oh, that's a bad idea. You'll paint you into the corner. Second thing is you got to do a lot of work. So, and there's not enough support for people who want to do the historic work of the research. So that's two kind of obstacles, you might say. Third one is cost. What's it going to cost you to take a building and try and make it more authentic, give it more integrity? In the case of the Harris building, the answer to that one was about $30,000. So can you make your money back? That's a question. In my case, I thought, yeah, it's good because, well, my renters just love a building that's got, a little bit of character. But there's one thing that can be an obstacle, and something harks back to what I said before in regard to commercial remodels. It's back to that same old thing, holding costs. You got to get past the delays that occur. So if you add it all up, 30,000 for doing the remodel,
30 seconds.
30,000 for in holding costs while you wait to get it done, 60,000. Will you get that back in your historic tax credits? For many people, they won't, and that's a discouragement. Got to get past those holding costs. That's the big deal. I keep saying it. I'll continue to say it. Anyway, I do see some positive signs in that regard. So tick that box. Thank you, Meredith, wherever you are.
Mr. Mayor, the speaker's reached 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Paul Romich.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. Paul Romich, District 1. I've read the Lorax, and he speaks for the trees, and I think he'd be proud of council and staff for making Puyallup a tree city. But in all actuality, Arbor Day is Friday, Earth Day was Monday. And part of this commitment, right, is, just not just keeping where we are, but continuing to better ourselves and reinvest into our community. Trees are one way to do it. And it's an excellent start. And the best way to, it was Earth Day Monday, right? So reduce, reuse, recycle. That's the order of the effectiveness, not just the catchiness of the saying, right? So reducing consumption. And a lot of that starts with with the city itself. So when we're talking reducing energy consumption, trees are great for that. But when we talk about other energy consumption, like in our form of transportation, trees can also benefit in that, reducing car speeds and, encouraging more people to get outside. But land use is more important element. And just bringing everything closer together so we don't need the cars, because sure, yeah, electric vehicles are making a lot of progress. However, 35% of microplastics in our waterway are from car tire wear. Electric vehicles aren't going to solve that, right? Asphalt itself, the infrastructure needed to maintain, a car-centric location raises the city's overall temperature by tens of degrees. And so it's, the best time to, plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the second best time is today. And so, as city council, right, you have the opportunity to, with this comprehensive plan update, really make some sweeping changes that can really benefit Puyallup, 2044, but also Puyallup 2064 and beyond, and really be a model city that, not just from a tree city perspective, but from just overall planning perspective, that we can, other cities can point to and be like, we want to be like Puyallup, we want to do the Puyallup, right? So I'm gonna leave you with the last page of the Lorax, a direct quote from the book. Unless someone like you
30
does a
seconds.
whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next, Carrie Anisak.
Sure, Yanasak District 2 and Director for the Puyallup Main Street Association. I just want to come down here and let you all know if you were gone or out of town last Friday and Saturday, you missed a heck of a weekend. As you know, unless you're living under a rock, Taylor Swift released this new album Friday. This was a big deal. Now, I know very little about Taylor Swift. I've heard her 3 most popular songs. I've never heard them before. Yes, I know it's hard to believe I would not know Taylor Swift. But we decided to do this Taylor event downtown Puyallup, and a bunch of businesses chimed in. And if you happen to listen to NPR, they mentioned that Taylor Swift celebrations were happening across the country from Puyallup to Pensacola.
Wow.
We made national news. That was it, nothing else. And the announcer even mentioned Puyallup correctly. I was blown away, but a ton of people came downtown. I believe Johnson Jewelers had mentioned, I think over 200 people had come into their store. So it's a really good event. And it was, for the most part, free for the community. And then Saturday morning kicked off with National Record Day. And if you're downtown at 2 o'clock in the morning, you would have seen people holding their spot to get into Atomic Genius because they had a limited supply, stack about this big, of Taylor Swift albums. And then the line went around the corner up Meridian. And when they opened at 8 by 8:26, they were sold out of their Taylor Swift albums. And then at 9 o'clock, the farmer's market opened. Now, in the history of the farmer's market, there's only been one bigger day in sales, which was Mother's Day last year, than opening day Saturday. It was an awesome event. The city council had a booth there, and it was very successful. And we're hoping that you do that every weekend, but it was just a great weekend in Puyallup. The weather certainly helped. So thank you to all those that participated, all those that came. It was a good weekend.
Thank you, Kerry. Kate, Joe Colombo.
Thank you, Mayor. I can confirm what Carrie said. I heard the national radio pronounce Puyallup correctly, so that was really good to hear.
Nice to hear.
Joe Colombo, District 2. First of all, I wanted to thank those of you on the council who took the time to respond to my email about the noise pollution that was being caused by the Motocross Mayhem event that took place the weekend of April 13th. The excessive noise appears to have been caused by one vehicle that had like a giant jet engine on the back that spewed fire, and we could hear it upwards of 2 miles away. We actually thought somebody was drag racing up Meridian, but it turns out that it was that vehicle, and some of you were able to talk to the CEO of the fair, and this past weekend it was fine. So thank you for those of you that took my concern seriously. I appreciate that. The second item I wanted to talk about was a post that was made on the City of Puyallup's Facebook page on April 2nd at 7 p.m. As you all know, city-owned resources, which does include social media, are prohibited from being used to promote a political candidate. The post was regarding the 3 25th Legislative District elected candidates, all who are running for office this year. Even though your post references city funding projects, it acted as giving free advertising to these 3 candidates. No evidence was provided in the post that any one of the 3 were directly involved in securing the funding for our city, and the post did give the appearance of partisan support. And as a resident and taxpayer of the city, I'm actually quite astonished that it got approved to be posted. In my time as an engaged Puyallup citizen, I've never seen a social media post by the city that was stumping for political candidates. And I can excuse this one-time instance to the inexperience of whoever does your social media. But if it does happen again, it's going to really look like that you're purposefully doing it for political gain. So please, I encourage you, please make sure this remains a one-time error. And I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. John Palmer. John, I'm going to call you honorable because I figure you get a year of being honorable. So we'd like to have you come back as many times as you want.
Appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. It's good to be back here. Good to see you all, council. I'm here for a couple of shout outs tonight on parks. First of all, I drove by on 15th of the new curb outs on the loop trail that have been installed. I don't know if they're completely done yet, but the cement's done. But that's really cool to see. That's been in the works for a while. But that, if you go, if you're on the loop trail when you're passing 15th, that's a pretty wide street, and cars go pretty fast there. And so that really, I think it cuts in half the distance walkers have to do, and the curb slows down traffic. So that's a great investment. It's good to see that there. The second item on your agenda tonight is the Van Lerp play equipment, approving that final approval. So that's exciting to see. I think it's innovative, both the farm centric play equipment plus the climbing boulders. I think that's going to be both those things are going to be a big hit in our community. And it's our first investment since we updated the master plan last year. So that's exciting to see that moving forward, assuming that all happens tonight. And then we got I don't know what the special treat is, but I do know one thing. I do know we have a fantastic new ice cream shop downtown. And it is fantastic. So close with that.
Okay, thank you. Boy, that ended my surprise. Having said that, is anyone else here this evening who would like to provide public comments? If not, we're going to move on to someone else who would like to be a very special guest here this evening. Okay, if I could have Heidi Kinney and her husband come forward. They are proprietors of a very new ice cream shop, a brand new ice cream shop here in Puyallup, and they have gifts for all of the council members. I hope you haven't eaten too much for dinner, or if you did, it's time for dessert. So if you would like to distribute those to all the council members, be greatly appreciated. This is a new ice cream parlor called Lick in downtown Puyallup, and we have been waiting anticipation for this place now for months and months and months. And I'm going to let them explain their dreams in public comments, but I'd like all of the council members to actually experience this. So this may take a second or two.
Is there any non-dairy people? I brought some just.
Any non-dairy?
Just Julie Gore.
That just means you don't get any.
Thank you. That's one.
Mr. Mayor, I think we should do this.
Whoa.
I think we should do this every week.
We will try. And I think we also have some for the city manager, a city attorney. We expect some very good rulings from you this evening. And then our city clerk. Heidi, if you would like to come to the microphone, and I'd like you to just tell us about yourself, you and your husband, about your new company and how you are taking Puyallup by storm, which you really are. But please go ahead.
Thank you for inviting me tonight. My name is Heidi Kinney and Matt is my husband. We own Lick Homemade Ice Cream. We are making everything on site in our small little space. So that's exciting. And it's been super busy and really exciting and fun for us. We have been a part of this community for a long time. We've raised our kids in this community and we always felt a need for an ice cream shop. So fast forward, here we are, and we are just hoping to bring a business and some fun and something that adds value to the community that we love. And that's it.
Thank you. Would
Thank
you
you
like to make
guys
a few
for
comments
inviting
too?
I'm good.
Okay, all right.
And we don't
Well-
know what district we're in.
Well, I have to tell you that my understanding is you sold out the first day
We did. We sold out on our grand opening weekend.
and you had a sign up that said you're feverishly working like all night.
We pretty much are. We make ice cream till about midnight,
Oh,
trying to, because we're making everything, we can only make so much and we only have so much space. So,
And we both have regular.
and we both have regular full-time jobs. So we're just figuring it out and making it happen, but it's been really fun and it's been really exciting to see the community so supportive and there for us. So it's been awesome.
thank you.
People
so
were
much.
ready for ice cream.
I will say the support was been
It's
amazing.
been so cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I have to say
What a
that
great community.
I don't normally like anything coffee other than coffee. This changed my life.
Oh.
This is amazing.
That he said it changed his life. Okay.
Mhm.
So you won't be alone.
It's all right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's Slick Ice Cream, and thank you for being part of the community. Okay, with that, we're now going to move on to item 4 on the agenda, consent agenda. If there's any one of these items that a member would like to pull off, so to speak, and put at another point in the agenda for discussion, please identify that. If not, I'd like to have a motion come before us to approve them.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion's been approved. I think that was a
Who said
motion
that?
for, but I was influenced by coffee, ice cream. And it's been seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to ordinances. This is the second reading of an ordinance approving the inclusion of building. This is the church that John Hopkins had mentioned, but under 5A, if we could have staff please come forward, familiarize us with this before we make the final vote on second reading.
Thank you, Mayor. Katie Baker in the Planning Division. So as you mentioned, this is second reading of an ordinance to add the Christ Episcopal Church to the Puyallup Local Historic Register. So this has gone through board review. The Design Review and Historic Preservation Board held a public hearing and unanimously recommended this be added to the register. I hope you'll recall the great presentation that Nabila Comstock gave a few weeks ago. There were lots of great pictures of the beautiful historic aspects of this church, quite a landmark in our downtown. And so we think we would be proud to add this to the register. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? If not, could I entertain, please, a motion to pass this on second reading?
So approval.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Clerk, can we please have roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Adler,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King,
Aye.
Councilmember Gilliam,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting,
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr,
Aye.
Mayor Castma.
Aye. With that, that passes. We will move on to number 6 on the agenda, consideration and requests. Under 6A, Van Laar Park Play Equipment Purchase and Update. Cody, if you'd like to give us the outline and information regarding that, that would be excellent.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. I'm here to give you an exciting update on the Van Laar Playground and also ask for authorization to purchase the play equipment tonight. So as former Councilmember Palmer mentioned, in December, we accepted this new master plan for Van Laar Park. And tonight we're going to focus on 15 and 16 on this map here, right in there. And so here is the site plan. On the left-hand side will be the play equipment, which is the farm theme play equipment. And on the right-hand side will be the play boulders. And here's the mock-up of the play equipment. And this is the exact play equipment and layout of the play equipment that is being proposed here tonight. And so it is farm themed and it will be ages 2 to 6. There will be a 2 to 6 area and then a 6 to 12 area. All of it's accessible to all ages and abilities. We will have play chips will be the infill there on the play equipment. And then here is the climbing boulders. So in the middle is the layout of the 3 climbing structures, and they range in a variety of sizes. And so the shortest, the smallest one goes up to just under 7 feet, and the tallest one is just over 11 feet tall. And also play chips and equipment there for the fall zone as well. So the timeline for this would be approval here this month, and then in May, BCRA will go out for bid with hopefully contractor being selected in June, hopefully early summer, but more likely late summer and fall construction. And they do anticipate it going fairly quickly. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, with a fall sometime in early fall grand opening. So tonight I'm asking for the total purchase of $412,975.61. And the funds for this is coming from the RCO grant along with our matching Parks capital funds. The total project cost is $800,000. And so we're asking for authorization to purchase the play equipment tonight. Questions?
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure there's going to be a few comments here, but I'd like to, I don't know if it requires a motion, but if so, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize staff to purchase the equipment as stated before us tonight. And then if there's any further questions, that's fine, but I want to kick it off with a motion.
Second.
The
Beat ya.
motion has been made and seconded. As the sponsor, Councilmember Johnson, do you want to continue?
Yeah, it's I really love the theme. I think it was mentioned because it was a farm, historic farm at some point. To have that farm theme really makes sense. And I really love that. Is it very similar to the one that's up in Edgewood that they have a farm theme? Have you into that one? Or is it different than the one up there?
Yeah, the other one up there is different. I mean, it has a different style tractor and a different style farm theme. I mean, ours is definitely Red Barn themed.
Yeah.
And theirs is, it's, I don't even think that there's that many similarities. It definitely sets itself apart.
Yeah, I
with the
wasn't worried about
colors and
it.
scheme, but accessibility wise and it should be.
Yeah, I wasn't concerned if it was even the same one. I guess my point is that I've heard such great things about that farm theme. If ours is somewhat comparable, we're going to get a lot of feedback. People will come all over just to kind of experience that. And I do love the added rock climbing. And it's a great way to build, I think, balance and just arm-leg coordination. And I understand, I did hear a briefing by city manager earlier that there's some safety things that are built into this. So it's not going to be just all flat out high danger, with some spacing apart, some good absorption of any falls that should come down, and some absorption of the thickness of the material down there. And I know, gosh, it's been decades, but what is it, old sprinkler field out there? And Spanaway's had that climbing rock for decades, sprinkler field, and it's fantastic. So I'm glad we have one. And I know, I don't know about other children, but I know my granddaughter, anytime I go to some of these little places, up at the South Hill Mall or whatever, she's climbing those things, and just a climber. So it's a great deal. So anyway, I'm so glad to see the design. So glad I trust for council support on this as well.
Thank you for those comments. Further questions? If I could briefly have Barbara Lopez come up, I just want to ask some, I guess, more fiscally responsible questions. I note that if we could go back, well, we actually don't have to go back to the slide. I just want to make sure that this project is on track. I saw the timeline, any kind of financial speed bumps we have to worry about. I just want to hear your analysis.
Good evening. Yes, it appears to me that the funding is available to do this project between the grant and other sources. I don't foresee any issues with getting this particular project done.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. And Barbara, I just want to for the public's awareness, parks funding, parks impact fees can only be used for parks, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm excited about this project. It's good to see this park start to get underway, and I do love the theme. So thanks, Cody.
Excellent. I'll just add my comment that it is really nice to see this park taking off. I mean, we went ahead and debated the schematic and what we would go forward with. But constituents are always asking us, well, when are you going to do it? Okay. Well, this is a clear example of us just punching forward. And I really can't wait to cut the ribbon or whatever we would do in this particular site, because I think the people in that area are just ready for something like this. So thank you. With that, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Excuse me, Chief or Clerk, do we have to get a roll call on this? Okay, fine. And it passes. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to other business. 7A, presentation regarding the transition to priority-based budgeting. Barbara, if you don't mind coming back.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. Good evening, Council. With me tonight via Zoom is Dawn Couch with Burke Consulting. She's going to be helping out with much of the presentation tonight. But we were with you back in November. It's been 5 months ago that we first appeared before you with Burke and talked about the work that they were going to be doing to help us transition to priority-based budgeting. We are now nearing the end of that contract with them. After that, that we'll have a good foundation for being able to move forward on our own. But we wanted to come back to you and tell you more of the work that actually has been done, and give you some ideas and some thoughts as far as what we're anticipating for the upcoming budget cycle itself. And ask if you've got any questions, and if you've got any feedback on that, we definitely want to hear that too. So Dawn is actually going to lead much of the conversation tonight, so I will turn that over to her.
Thank you, Barbara. Good evening for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And then you'll drive the presentation, or the clerk will? So
I will do that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, as Barbara said, so thank you for having me tonight. My name's Dawn Couch. I'm with Burke Consulting, and I was one of kind of 3 members of the consulting team supporting the city of Puyallup in this engagement. For our presentation tonight, we're going to kind of review the purpose of the project and review a little kind of high level about priority-based budgeting. These are 2 items that we discussed back in November, but we're going to do a quick kind of recap of that. And then we're going to kind of go through and talk about what the work we've done together with the staff and a work group comprised of kind of line staff across the organization. So next slide, please. So just a little bit of a reminder of the project purpose. And we kind of have, when we say project, we have 2 projects here. So the first one is the city of Puyallup's interest in transitioning to priority-based budgeting. It's a kind of approach to budgeting that's used by many high-performing organizations. And so there's a couple reasons that Puyallup expressed some interest in transitioning to this approach. So the first one is really, it makes a much more clear alignment between the city's resources, e.g. the budget, and its strategic plan or its strategic objectives. So it kind of aligns the budget to those kind of work programs. It provides in that kind of improves the overall management system in terms of this like kind of cycle of accountability. And then the third thing is it makes the budget process much more transparent. The budget is a pretty significant kind of not policy but very significant aspect of the city government in terms of how the taxpayer resources are used. And so it makes that process more accessible and intelligible to the community at large. So on the right hand of the screen is sort of explanation of what our engagement is with the city at the beginning of this transition. So our first kind of goal was to support the city in developing a process to implement priority-based budgeting. So we worked in close collaboration with city staff. As part of that process, we wanted to increase the overall understanding of the process, its benefits, some of the mitigating challenges that are associated with any budgeting process. And the third goal for our project was to develop some champions amongst the staff as the organization moves into the implementation phase. And so for item 2, we just want to do a really high level overview of what priority-based budgeting is. And this is the same kind of high level that we presented when we were back in November. So at the highest level, we think of it as 3 steps. So the first one is, rather than the budget being organized by the city's organizational chart, so where you have your departments and then kind of some sub-organizations within those departments, it reorganizes the budget around the programs that you offer or the services that you offer. That makes it a little bit more intelligible to community members because it describes the city's use of resources in the ways that they're experienced by community members. What that also does, which is that item 2, is it makes the full cost of those services a little bit more understandable. One service may actually draw upon resources across multiple departments. So under conventional budgeting, it's really hard to understand the full investment of the city in that service. And finally, priority-based budgeting does include an evaluation process of the programs according to the city's stated objectives and goals. For this process and working with Puyallup, we really focused on the strategic plan, which is something the council and the city has worked and the communities worked together to produce. So we took that as a stated set of objectives and goals to guide this process. So this was the high level. So next we kind of just overview of the process for Puyallup. And Barbara, you can kind of click through. For each of these stages, we just with the work group talked about the who, the role, the person, the body that was making that step and what that step was. So the first one, priority-based budgeting, also always starts with a kind of unequivocal, clear statement of what the budget is, the number, what the resources are at the outset. And so that's work that your finance department has always done. So that's always the first step in the budgeting process, having that transparency and clarity. The second is identifying the community priorities. Fortunately, Puyallup has done a lot of that work through the strategic planning process. We're able to build on that kind of initiative and inertia. In addition to the community priorities, there could be additional set of organizational strategic priorities. That's also part of your strategic plan. And with the work group, we also discussed some other types of priorities that are relevant for the city as we implement this process. Next slide. The department and staff leads, those are the folks right now. Some are kind of at various steps of this process, but developing that program inventory, which is talking about all the services the city provides as programs. And then what would come next after that is the evaluation phase, where you evaluate those programs according to the goals set forth in the strategic plan. And then finally, based on all that process and inputs, the city manager, city council make the final kind of budgeting decision, which is very similar to your existing process. So just looking at, so how do we go about that? So the first thing that we started with is developing a kind of cross-departmental work group to advise on the development of the process. So we had about, I think, 12, 13 folks that worked with us. We had some workshops. They, in the design phase with us, they're very active. They provided expertise and insight on kind of staff and community concerns about the transition. They did some liaisoning with staff. We would give them sort of interview questions to take back to staff. They provide us the feedback, and they advised on the design of the process. They're really well positioned. They're sort of the local experts now on priority-based budgeting. And so in the implementation phase ahead of you, they'll be the actual implementers, the people helping build the budget, and also for being that sort of in-organizational champion for it, for the process and transition. Next slide. Our next focus of that was getting to the nuts and bolts of designing that process for Puyallup. Working with the work group, we built out the vocabulary, that shared vocabulary, and then kind of a shared understanding of the process for Puyallup's priority-based budgeting. In that, we developed some training materials, some FAQ. On the side here, we have kind of a screen grab of a how-to guide. And we provided a collection of resources the work group members thought would be helpful for implementing. Kind of a small example of that is looking at program inventories for other jurisdictions that have some similar programs, just to see how those organizations divided up the story about the different programs. Slide, actually, let me see on this slide. Can you go back one more? Yeah. One of the big steps in the process is actually defining what is that evaluation unit for the budget. So we're using in Puyallup the term program, and this is the definition where we landed at the end of the process. So a program is a collection of people, resources, and activities organized to deliver a valued result to internal or external community members. And so the training guide that we have sort of breaks apart all those bolded terms so that there's a very common vocabulary and understanding of those terms and how they're intended in the process. Thank you. The process where we are now in the phase is the developing of that program inventory. So the Burke consulting team, along with your finance department, did an initial workshop, kind of a modeling workshop with the Parks Department, and kind of with that tested and vetted and revised and additional program tools to help the departments create their initial program inventories. So that's where we are in the process now. The different departments are in the process of developing. Some are much further along than others. And at the end of this process, we'll be able to roll all that information together to have a complete inventory of the city's programs. So some of the guidelines that we provided the departments as they're doing the program inventory is, this is basically based on the city's current work. At this moment that we're not looking for kind of proposals for new programs. It's rather recasting the city's existing work in a program way. So the next slide provides a little bit more clarity on that. So the first kind of before under conventional budgeting, the city's work in the budget subscribed according to the organizational chart. So you'll have your various departments. And so this is the work of this department, or these are the resources of this department. This is our staff. These are our service costs, et cetera, all by departments. After the program inventory, you're recasting those same resources in the ways that they're experienced by the community members. So a program you have a program and it's experienced, it might be experienced by a community member as a youth sports program, but in that youth sports program, it would include the parks and recreational staff to do the program, the facilities on which the programs run, as well as the human services, finance, and city leadership functions necessary to bring that program to the community. All those components would be represented in the definition of that program. So as things are experienced by the community members. And so what we have now is some examples of some of that initial work, and I'll invite Barbara to kind of share a little bit more on these kind of interim process pieces.
Absolutely. One of the things that we found in working with the various departments is the getting started part on actually defining what your programs are was rather daunting. It was even daunting for me. So it was really helpful that we worked with Burke and they kind of came up with this model of a kickoff workshop that we've been out to every single department. And that kickoff workshop actually focused on brainstorming that involved sticky notes and whiteboards, you know, good old fashioned paper to pencil a little bit. So the example that you see on here is actually from the city manager's office. I thank them for sharing their work. But essentially it was just all of the different things that they do, and we organized them. They organized them into various themes. And so that they could, and those themes can become programs. So they're working on the name and a description for it. The different things that fall underneath of it are the basis for the description. They're going to be working on adding people to it, you know, what people are supporting which programs, other costs. And then if there's revenues too, we'll overlay those on top. But it was really that kickoff workshop, that old-fashioned brainstorming that really got the departments started thinking about it and was very successful. So taking the city manager's office programs a little bit further, they've just kind of reoriented those sticky notes into their various categories. So some of the different programs that they have are, you know, leadership and administration, council support, community engagement, legislative affairs. They've got several of them with several different items underneath each one of them. Their next step is to take this and actually put it into the workbook that Burke developed for us so that we can have a repository for all of the information and attach the people to the different tasks, attach costs to the different tasks, then take all of that and actually load it and use it to do budgeting. So this is kind of the interim work, and they're working right now on filling out that workbook. So far, it's been going pretty well. We'll know a little bit more in the next couple of weeks. The departments still have a couple more weeks to work on their drafts for that. And then we in finance will start working with them more heavily to make sure on the costing side and what the revenue side, what revenues may or may not go with a particular program. And I'll turn it back to Dawn for the next one.
Thank you. So once the program inventory is done, there's a process, an evaluation process that's a significant component of priority-based budgeting. What we did with the work group is sort of advanced or studied and kind of pulled apart a lot of the strategic plan to break apart what are the city actions that commits to, and then what are the intended results listed in that strategic plan. And so that is the components that become the evaluation rubric for the programs. The way it's typically done is you would have each department evaluate their own programs according to that rubric. And then there's also this kind of cross-departmental peer review of the rubric, and then some aggregation of those scores. The idea in priority-based budgeting isn't that you just fund all your top programs. There's some other consideration into that. There's some required governance, function of government things that you must do. There's some required kind of internal shared services that you need to do that might not land very high on your kind of ranking rubric. The idea of it, though, is as you look at those rubrics, you look to see where you can take some of the resources currently for lower priority programs and apply them to kind of higher priority programs and try to shift some of the alignment of resources towards those higher priority, higher ranking programs. So that would be the information on which the city management team and the council would make decisions within the overall budgeting process, that last step in the process slides that we showed you a few slides earlier. That work comes after the program inventory. So that will be work that will be forthcoming in the next couple of months. Next slide. So the next slide is kind of where we are now. So we're finalizing the implementation process and tools, the resources the cities has to do their process. We're finalizing the training and resource implementation tools. Burke is kind of still engaged in the process and will be working on providing some feedback and advice on the draft program inventories that Barbara talked about, so that you have a complete picture there, and doing some of that initial storytelling around that complete inventory. And then at that process, the city kind of moves as they kind of start to kick off their next biennial budget process. They're in a good position to do that work. We have some tools that we did in the interim, but it will all migrate over to the city's Open Gov system, which is their current kind of budgeting software program. So it'll be building within that programming environment.
So then, oh,
go ahead, Barbara.
I was going to say that. So then for the upcoming 25-26 budget process, some of the things that you can expect to see differently than what you see them now is that the documents and discussions that we have with you, that we provide you in, and the discussions that we have with you will be oriented around those programs rather than departments, so that you can get a sense of what those are. We will have, titles and descriptions. Our goal is to communicate in plain language so that we're not using our acronyms and other things to try to explain our work, that we use a plain language for that. That for those programs too, you'll be able to see the full cost of that program, the staffing, the supplies, the other costs that may go into that. And if that program has offsetting revenues, some do, some don't. Some fully offset, some probably don't. And there's probably good reasons either direction for that. So that is something else that you can expect to see in this upcoming budget process. Dawn mentioned the evaluation rubric. We are spending a lot of time focusing on the programs inventory and that foundation. We are not certain that we will get to the evaluation rubric this time around. Because we want to make sure that we've got that core foundation very, very solid for moving forward. If time allows, we will attempt to do that as well, but I just want to be upfront that it may not be ready at that level. But at minimum, you will have better information and we will be able to have better conversations about the actual work that the city does. And with that, Dawn and I are available with any questions or feedback or requests that you might have.
Councilmember Whitting.
Just a couple of questions. I'm assuming from your presentation that the finance department will go poof and disappear and the cost of the finance department will then be allocated to the programs that you support.
There's a couple of different ways that we could do that. We could either have ourselves be programs that are more internal facing, or we can do that poof and we just administrate it out. Right now, I'm leaning towards just having it be its own separate programs. And so where you can actually see those as they are and what those things are that we do. And then we'd likely end up with another version that does distribute us out.
Okay, and you know, everything we do depends on funding. And we apply for a lot of do a lot of grant applications. So as we allocate these I'll call them overhead costs to various programs, I'm assuming that this process will allocate those in a way that will support our grant applications and align with those.
Yes, it's not every grant is eligible to have an overhead attached to it. And so, and most grants luckily are capital project based. And so we likely won't be doing a ton of allocating of like finance time or you know, HR time or those sorts of times to those kinds of things. It would probably be at a bit higher level.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Barbara, thank you and Dawn, thank you for the presentation. I think that this is a great program. I'm really excited about it. I think that it helps us, you know, take a look at what we've been doing forever and finding out, you know, whether or not that is meeting our strategic goals. And I think it's really helpful for the public. It's going to be something that's much simpler for them to understand when they're looking into the budget. It will make sense to them. So I appreciate the effort and the time. I just want to touch on one comment that Councilmember Whitting said. We do have the grant coordinator program. So will that be, or not program, I'm sorry, position. Will that be allocated out or is that still going to?
I still have to figure that out. So when you're the finance director, your department tends to be the last one that defines your programs. So I haven't quite exactly figured out how that one's going to work just yet.
Okay. And you know, I've totally recognized that this is going to be a learning process. And I would rather we get it right and bring people along than try to rush to, you know, the end of the project. So thank you for working on that.
I have just two questions. Number one, I'd actually like to see an example of a city's budget that does this. An actual example. Can we get that?
Yes, absolutely. The city of Redmond is probably the most robust in terms of doing this, in that they've been doing it for a really long time.
I understand there'll be differences, obviously, but I just want to kind of see it visually as to how that's done. And then the second question I have is, what type of auditing, internal auditing will we have? Who will be the, I don't know what other term to use other than auditor to make sure that these costs are precise? Because there'll be a level of subjectivity, I believe, in these. And in all my years of, you know, state agency oversight, whatever, I have seen a lot of subjectivity based on programs. And it's very important that we get very precise information that, and again, I don't I don't want to question someone's judgment, but someone who is looking at the numbers and verifying them.
So finance, myself and Aaron Thompson, my budget financial analyst, we will definitely be helping departments do that and try to bring to it a note of reasonableness. Because most of our folks don't do timesheets to that level of detail, and we don't necessarily want them to, because that adds another extra burden on. It will be professional judgment by all of the department directors. They're people who do the work, to help us make sure that we're getting costs allocated as reasonably accurate as we can.
Okay, good. As long as that's a point, I think, again, accuracy for it to be really effective. And I agree, Councilmember Dorr, we're just, we gotta crawl before we walk. We gotta walk before we run, and we can do all of that. But keep that in mind that we're looking for, if this is really going to be an effective tool, it's got to be very accurate, or as accurate as possible. Okay. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much. And thank you, Dawn, for your input too. Appreciate that very much. Look forward to more interaction with you. With that, we're going to now move on to 7B, which is the Meeker Festival Street project update. Kind of excited about this. I actually showed this Saturday at the farmer's market. I had the big, huge display out, and I have to tell you, it was probably the #1 attraction at the city booth. Was everybody was really enthusiastic about this particular project. But of course, everybody wants to know when it's going to happen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Eric Johnson, City Public Affairs Officer. I'm here to introduce myself and also Craig Moore from Parametrics. We're co-project managers for the Meeker Festival Street project, and we're here to give you an update on this very exciting project. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Nathan Polanski from MIG, who's remote in from Zoom for us, and he will be taking us through our project update. So go ahead and take it away, Nathan.
Great, Eric. Thanks for having me here, and share my screen. We'll get started. Okay, so we are talking about the Meeker Festival Street Outreach and Concept Design Project. And for tonight's presentation, we'll talk through and give a little bit of an overview and reminder of what we talked about when we met with you in January. We'll present the preliminary design concepts that you were just mentioned, and kind of learn about community feedback on those concepts and see where we're headed as we move forward. So just as a reminder for everyone, this project came out of the Downtown and Meridian Streetscape project that was completed in 2022. This was a high priority project for the city, and we are currently working on kind of the first phase of this project, that is that concept design. So kind of the goal for the city is, if we can kind of wrap and land this project, ideally the city is hoping to move into a design phase, but that'll be pending a few things to with staff. The purpose of the project is to look for and kind of identify and develop a flexible space in the public right of way for downtown events that can adapt to kind of a variety of community needs, and also reconstruct the street and replace aging public utility infrastructure, water main, extending the sanitary sewer, redoing the storm drain system, and kind of those two things together also provide an opportunity to encourage redevelopment and investment in downtown, and kind of particularly with the Cornforth Campbell site adjacent to it. And lastly, kind of strengthening that connection kind of long-term towards the Meeker Mansion site, as downtown kind of becomes more pedestrian oriented and expands to the east of Meridian. So just as a quick reminder on the study area, so we're talking about Meeker between Meridian and 3rd. And the scope of this project is really focused on developing a design concept that can move forward for engineering design. And a big part of this process is going through a community engagement process and talking with kind of the broader public, as well as adjacent business and property owners, downtown organizations, and other businesses. In addition to developing the design concept, will also be helping the city kind of start to think about event and activity considerations for programming and implementing the street in the future. In terms of where we are on the 2/3 of the way through, and this is our second update to council. So we're talking about preliminary design concepts. Our third and final meeting, assuming we kind of track the original plan, will be to come back this summer to present a preferred design concept. And in terms of the community outreach, we've recently closed an online survey that will be going through. I've talked to a variety of kind of interested parties and focus groups. So as a recap of some of the things that we talked about in January, we met with downtown business owners, adjacent property owners. We had a well-received online survey. And some of the key things that we learned were the interests and kind of desire to explore opportunities for wider sidewalks, continue to have slow traffic moving along Meeker. When we talk about a festival street, this is a festival street that might be closed once a month, every couple months, but it would be open for normal use kind of the majority of the time. There's a lot of focus from business owners on kind of considering that there's access and their needs, both for customers and deliveries, the types of infrastructure and types of events that might be held there. We talked with downtown event organizers. We've had some conversations with the city about the adjacent Cornforth Campbell redevelopment site and opportunities for this site to coordinate there. Two of the things that we heard loud and clear from the community as a part of the first online survey was really exploring opportunities to include more tree canopy and more planting. So that's one of the things, in addition to thinking about a 4 seasons use, not just kind of warm summer months, but also those darker kind of drearier winter days. So taking the feedback from that first set of outreach last year and the feedback that we heard from city staff, we've been working and meeting with a technical advisory committee made up of folks across kind of public works and economic development and planning. And one of the things that we've heard is, we do want to maintain two-way traffic and opportunities for parking on Meeker Festival Street. So when we look at our 60-foot right-of-way across Meeker, there's not a lot of opportunities for variability, recognizing that we need to kind of keep 2 travel lanes, that parking in your sidewalk space. So as we developed 3 preliminary design concepts, we were really focused on how that experience and space and use of Meeker could be changed as you move along the block. We know that the existing driveways, doorways, and alleys are things that are going to be fixed points today and in the future, but there are opportunities to kind of explore different configurations for where trees are, planting areas, the sizes and locations of gathering spaces, parking layout, and then also how that space could be used for festivals and events in the future. The 3 preliminary concepts that were developed were shared through a variety of tools, advertised online via social media. It was sent out in a monthly e-newsletter. The city's project website had a link to the survey. We met with focus groups, and so we met with those same people that we met with late last year to talk about the project, to present the preliminary design concepts. The project team with city staff did a walkabout and knocked on the doors and had meetings with adjacent property owners. City staff put flyers up, and then we also put posters in public spaces to advertise the survey and the concepts. And those were posted at the library, senior center, and city hall, and at the rec center. So I'll kind of now walk through each of the 3 design concepts that were shared with the community. And so the first concept was called the Central Plaza, and this was really Puyallup's kind of future and the redevelopment potential of the city-owned Cornforth Campbell lot. And so this concept focused on creating a large central gathering space at the intersection of 2nd Street Southeast and Meeker as sort of a focal point for the festival street, whether it be for everyday use or festivals. It also looked to kind of consolidate parking to one side of the street. So the north side of the street between Meridian and 2nd, and the south side between 2nd and 3rd. And that allowed opportunities for more trees and gathering spaces that were paired next to each other and near existing and future businesses. It's also looked at kind of creating a stage or planning around kind of a festival setup that was focused around that central area. Here is a visual representation of this, and you can see here how On the right side of the image, you've got kind of a slightly wider sidewalk, but then that pedestrian kind of people space expands out into the parking zone, opportunities for kind of seating and tables and chairs and kind of tucked in between planting areas and trees, and that sort of alternates on the far end of the block. The second design concept was what we call the Meeker Promenade, and this was inspired by Puyallup's past in the Meeker Mansion and the 1992 downtown design charrette that, talked about the idea of a promenade and kind of a tree-lined corridor along Meeker. And so this shows, trees at regular intervals kind of along the block, a smaller kind of gathering space, kind of centralized at the intersection, similar to the Central Plaza. Parking at regular intervals. One of the things we have been doing as we've been developing concepts is going out and talking to other agencies that have developed and implemented festival streets in their communities to take lessons learned from those projects and apply those to this. So kind of parking areas kind of at regular intervals, and then again, sort of trying to kind of preserve views to the Meeker Mansion. So kind of keeping a potential stage area and kind of gathering space outside of that intersection. So as you're looking down Meeker, you can continue to kind of see the Meeker Mansion in the background. And so here's that image of that kind of more regular array of trees and parking along the street. And the third design concept we called Connecting the Core. This was really inspired by kind of the present day current intersection kind of layout downtown, where you've got, 6 or 8, at a typical 4-way intersection, you've got, 2 trees on each corner. So you have 8 trees at each of the corners. And so really using trees clustered around intersections, parking and gathering spaces next to existing and future businesses. And then here having a festival setup that would be maybe more similar to the way Meeker Days is staged for the festival currently. And again, here you can see looking down the street of a kind of rendering of this, sort of less trees and vegetation, a little bit more parking, not quite as much space for people. So each of these concepts, we walked through and talked with the adjacent business owners along the street, downtown organizations, the chamber, and the Main Street Association. We met with event organizers, and we talked with the advisory committee. So in addition to those kind of smaller and one-on-one outreach activities, we had an online survey that was open for 3 weeks. And this is a picture of the large poster that was advertised in the library. And the feedback that we got from people, I think there was the strongest interest in the Central Plaza concept across the interested parties in these smaller focus groups. And people really were drawn to that focal point and central area to activate with the Central Plaza and, the potential connection for a future redevelopment. Local businesses in downtowns continued to kind of stress and wanted to learn more about sort of access and parking considerations, and appreciated the thought that had been put into the developing the 3 concepts, and reiterated the importance of redevelopment and drawing people to this street, which today doesn't have as many people walking along these 2 blocks. And then event organizers and vendors asked about restrooms, access to restrooms, power for events, and exploring opportunities to kind of mitigate the expense and complexity of setup for future events. So that's what we heard from the smaller focus group feedbacks. The online survey, we had almost 900 people complete the survey. The majority, almost 70% of those, lived in the city of Puyallup, which was great. And what we learned is people were very positive on all of the concepts, and they liked different aspects of each concept for different reasons. But in general, there was more positive feedback for that Central Plaza. So similar feedback to what we heard from our smaller focus group and interested parties meetings. 90% of people sort of at least, were neutral on it or liked it a lot. And similarly, you can see that kind of strong feedback for the Meeker Promenade, as well as the Connecting the Core. In terms of the concept that inspired the most enthusiasm, that was also that Central Plaza, and people really liked that kind of central focal point and the opportunity to potentially plan and coordinate that with the future development on the city's Cornforth Campbell site. Some of the specific things, and these were kind of reoccurring across the three concepts, but for different reasons. The Central Plaza, people really liked the idea of trees, shading, and kind of framing seating areas for people and framing the entrance to the street, that large central gathering space that I've mentioned, and then the festival setup in that central area. The Meeker Promenade, again, trees were kind of where people were most drawn to, and they liked trees being on both sides of the street. And the connection to the Meeker Mansion. And connecting the core, people liked that gathering spaces were scattered throughout the block, and also trees at the intersection. So a lot of repeating things. And what was great to hear, I think, from the project team's perspective is we heard the same things from different groups. And these became feedback that we can really start to move forward with a preferred concept. Here's the picture of the in-person poster that was hung at the library, and similar to the online survey, the majority of people were drawn to some of the elements and the concept of the Central Plaza. So looking forward, we've developed 3 preliminary concepts. Our kind of work plan is now to kind of gather feedback tonight from council, but then start to develop a preferred concept design. And so the things that have been identified through this process is, working around that Central Plaza and stage as a focal point for the project, thinking about the festival setup and kind of stage opportunities that can preserve views to the Meeker Mansion during events, opportunities to coordinate with the planned redevelopment on the Cornforth Campbell, and as something moves forward there, thinking about restroom opportunities and storage, spaces for trees and medium-sized gathering spaces kind of at the ends of the block and kind of scattered throughout. Maintaining some parking on both sides of the streets, and long-term looking for a connection to the Meeker Mansion across 3rd Street in that final concept design. So those are some of the key things that we're going to be working with city staff and our technical advisory committee to move forward. In terms of next steps, we're going to be taking the next kind of month and a half to start to take these elements and refine them and meet with the technical advisory committee before we go back out to the focus groups and kind of adjacent business owners to get additional feedback. And we'll be planning to come back to council with an update on the preferred concept. So that's the presentation that we have for tonight. So I'm going to stop sharing screen and open it up for questions.
Hey, thank you, Nathan. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great presentation, great illustrations on all fronts, and collection of data that you guys have received from those that partaked in that. Just as a curiosity question, do you know what any of the, other than the votes, obviously leaning more towards concept design 1, do you know any of the feedback regarding why they did not choose concept number 3 over 1? Was it more of the congregation in the center where you have the seating there? Do you know what the consensus was on that?
Yeah, I don't think that it was as much that they chose 1 over 3. I think there were maybe more elements that resonated, but what we heard consistently in looking at the write-in comments, people really liked the kind of central focal point of the 2-block kind of Festival Street area and sort of being an opportunity to focus activities and events.
Yeah, I mean, I really like concept 1. I like the openness that it shows coming off of Meridian, where the trees are kind of pushed back a little bit from the concept that I see here. There's not as many trees, but enough to create shade where needed. So I do like that, where it allows it to still be open. Are these trees going to be the right trees that aren't going to destroy our sidewalks? Asking for a friend.
Yes, that is correct. We're going to be looking at trees species as well as what kind of design tools can we use, whether they be sort of soil cells that allow more soil volume for trees to really reduce the conflict between tree roots and public infrastructure and sidewalks that you see in a lot of the downtown corners today.
Has there been any discussion of the type of tree that's going to be put in there?
Not yet, but we will be coming back with the council with the preferred design with more information on kind of furnishings and planting and tree species.
So I've gotten a lot of requests for cherry blossoms. I'm just putting that out there. I don't know if they ruin sidewalks. I know nothing about them, but from folks that have ran into me on the street, they would really like to see our downtown flourished with cherry blossoms. So put that on your notes. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson. Oh, are you through, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I only want to say about cherry blossoms. I have 2 of them in my front yard, both of them planted when my daughters were born. Those cherry blossoms last for a very short time, then they all blow away.
That's okay.
Okay. Fine. Just want to point that out. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the people got this right. I 100% go for the Central Plaza. And I'll tell you what really moved me on that is I had a flashback of Meeker Days. And a lot of times on Meeker Days, we've had a stage set up down there by a Meeker mansion, and people gathered and kind of celebrated in that particular area. And as I looked at the Central Plaza design, there was a stage kind of set up off to the side. So we wouldn't have to block the street up, set up a stage, and then tear it back down again. You could actually have something perhaps off to the side, kind of centrally set up as kind of a year-round multiple use space without to close the street off and set up stage actually in the street. So I love that idea. The only thing that I really was kind of a little bit, would love to see from the Meeker Promenade, although I think Central Plaza is the one to go for, because there's a central gathering area and people I could see them with that stage off to the side, kind of gathering there. But the connectivity of the trees kind of going down the festival street, I think that could be attained with some really cool string lights. So if you had kind of lights that went parallel east to west, that went from Meridian all the way down to Meeker Mansion, so it gave you that kind of streetscape to kind of highlight the mansion. You could do that without necessarily having trees be that wayfinder. So if we could, maybe look at if we end up going with the Central Plaza, maybe consider adding some lights that might go east to west to connect up and down Meeker Street all the way up through and connect to the Meeker Mansion. So I think they got it right on this one. I can't wait to start utilizing it and to see people gathering and having some fun at that offset stage at Central Plaza. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castro. I concur with the community's vote. I really enjoy the Central Plaza outline as well. I have spent easily 15 years on that street. And one of my favorite things to do is watch the leaves of the trees fade and go in and out of season. But I was just curious, looking at the layout of where parking is located, do we actually have enough room on the width of the street with where our businesses are located for a 2-way as well as bigger sidewalk and parking like this is presenting? Because I've also picked up a lot of garbage on that street, and from memory serving me correctly, I don't know if the street is wide enough to accommodate all of that.
Yeah, so one of the things, the existing travel way of the road is sort of 2 12-foot lanes, and so there's an opportunity to take those down to 2 10-foot lanes, and you get 2 extra feet for each side of the sidewalk.
Okay. I would like us to consider, and maybe this is just over the top a little bit, but if you go to Tacoma and some spots where there's very limited drive-through space, parking is actually more slanted rather than parallel. You can fit more cars in, and you have to nose in or whatever direction they give, but it's like you can fit a few more cars if you go sideways. Or consider removing parking completely on that street. Depending on what we want to do to our downtown core, if we want to have more pedestrian space and more consistent pedestrian space for festivals and activities and things, maybe for this section of our town, we just simply consider removing parking options and make it more hospitable to pedestrian activity. Just the thoughts are out there. I also really love the concept of the center stage because I feel like we can actually fit more people around the area to enjoy whatever's happening on that stage. So just a few thoughts to throw out there. Thank you.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. So I love the Central Plaza, and City Manager Kirkley knows this. I send him pictures. I would encourage us to look at City Center in DC. I love the way that they incorporate the different themes into their to that street, and it does connect it. So council, you might want to look, I can show you my pictures, but anyway, I think it's a great, I love what they have to say, and I think that I would like to see us look into some of these different ways. So they have leaves during the fall, or they have lanterns during the cherry blossom. They have umbrellas during the fall. So different ways in which to engage the the two sides of it. And it creates, a festive environment. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in, Councilor Gilliam's idea. I think we should entertain the parking adjustment on that. If I recall right, there are some city parking lots in that area that we could really emphasize right there. That's already square lot city parking. So I would sure love to see maybe if we could entertain that, replacing that parking in the very near vicinity and really making it pedestrian friendly with walking. Just it's an interesting thought. I don't think we should be afraid to at least look at it. We may not end up going there, but sometimes bold leadership means, taking some kind of bold, innovative looks. So I would concur. Sure love to see us take a look at that.
Okay, seeing no further comments, I want to thank you, Nathan, for coming forward. Thank you. And I apologize, your first name again? Craig. Thank you, Craig, for being here. And with that, we're going to move on to the next item, 7C. I think, Eric, you're going to stay up for this. It's the downtown wayfinding signage plan update. And these are basically signs that tell people where to go when they come into our town, the various attractions, where to park, where the library is, where the Meeker Mansion is, where the fair is, et cetera, and kind of a guidepost. So Eric, take it away.
Yep, absolutely. So Eric Johnson, again, City Public Affairs Officer for presentation number 2 here on the wayfinding signage project. And with me via Zoom is Dean DeShetler from MIG, who's going to be getting this presentation going here. And I'll be starting us off, and then I will pass it over to him.
Good evening.
Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so for today's agenda, we'll just give you a quick background on this project and kind of the genesis, if you will, of how we got to today, and then also talk about the project goals that were determined from this project. And then I'll pass it over to Dean, who will talk about where we are in the project schedule, talk a little bit about the strategy report that was drafted, and then we'll get into the eye candy here, which is the design concepts, and then leave some room at the end for feedback and questions. So next slide. So if you recall, so the wayfinding signage plan was identified in the Meridian Streetscapes report, which Nathan Polanski had mentioned in the previous presentation. That report was generated in, I believe it was November of 2022. Within that report were 10 priority projects that were identified based on community feedback and also from you all, the council. And one of the top requested projects by the council and the community was this project, the wayfinding signage plan. So knowing this, the city contracted with MIG to produce the wayfinding signage plan, and we are here to present you with an update on that. So the project goals, so first and foremost, is to help people navigate through downtown. So as Mayor Casaba had mentioned, the wayfinding signs are, if you will, they're the breadcrumbs that lead people to different destinations and places where to park, where to eat, where to stay, attractions in the area. Also to strengthen our connection between downtown and the fairgrounds. That was a big goal. And to also develop a consistent and coordinated signage system that we have downtown. And also to explore opportunities for incorporating art features into the wayfinding system, and also identify street improvements to enhance key entries to downtown and help develop and strengthen Puyallup's unique identity. So go to the next slide. So where we are right now, so we are currently still in phase 1, which is the planning and concept phase. We are currently at the wayfinding signage design concepts task, if you will, of this project. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Dean, who will take us through those.
That's right. We're about halfway through phase 1. Once we get through this, we'll be heading into phase 2. We'll take the design concepts you'll see tonight and develop them a little bit further and get that implemented. But where we've come from, we've presented a strategy report in February and shared that with the stakeholder group. And that included the site assessment, proposed gateway locations, and recommended sign types. We also shared the design concepts that you've reviewed before with the stakeholders. There was 4 concepts we presented. And from the feedback from the stakeholders, there were 2 preferred concepts. And with revisions, the 2 concepts that were chosen are what you're seeing tonight. And as part of the initial workshop kickoff, we did some exercises with the stakeholders to help determine what is the style and aesthetic that is preferred for the sign types themselves. What is the character of the signage? What should it reflect as far as, Puyallup, its agriculture, branding, and the fair? So those are some of the things that we needed to determine and get a grasp on before we move forward with design. We also talked about fabrication and some of those concerns as far as durability, maintenance and repair, and cost. I mentioned earlier, we had provided recommended sign types. What you're looking at on the screen is the full list of sign types that we were recommending. But as far as what you're presenting for concepts, it's only the ones that are in the blue asterisk, which is a vehicular directional, a gateway, parking directionals, pedestrian kiosk, and pedestrian directionals and orientation maps. So to the eye candy, the first concept is artistic branding. And this is really influenced by the new tourism branding logo, all the identification for that and branding colors, all the artistic elements that are around downtown, some of the cultural elements around downtown, like the fair, and of course the daffodils. So we wanted to capture this into some form of identity that really stood out for the wayfinding system. So what you're looking at here is at the bottom left, the vehicular directionals. Next to that is the parking directionals. Next to that is a pedestrian directionals, and then pedestrian kiosk with orientation map. And so what we're doing here with the shape of the sign, having curved edges and curved armature, we're kind of emulating what we think is, a flower or a daffodil or some type of nature. But we're doing this in a very contemporary and modern way to keep that on, the upcoming edge here. Let's see. And so you'll find the consistent elements within this particular concept are those curved edges, the armatures, and also the dimensional finials that are at the top. We really want to have an opportunity to showcase whether it be the new tourism branding logo, like this daffodil right here, and the O is taken right from the new branding, or have the opportunity to bring in elements from the fair or even some of the art that's around downtown. So it's a way to be artistic and unique without disrupting the information that is on the face of the sign, which is purely directional information, which is obviously the priority for this. We're also showing an opportunity to acknowledge downtown and indicate the identity of that with a double layered panel system here. You can see on the back. The back here is another opportunity to bringing some of the cultural and historical elements from Puyallup and give some interest to the backside, since you really can't have any directional information on that side. The parking directionals are very simple, simple panels here that just emulate the style of the curved top. It could be a single post panel, or it could actually be mounted to an existing light post. Moving on to the pedestrian directionals, we're showing a couple options for this. One is a single panel solution, and one is a multiple panel solution that gives a little more playfulness and interest too. But both have the ability to have that finial on top, whether it be, again, the daffodil or something else, some artwork. Then there's the pedestrian kiosk, again, taking the same type of features, curved armature, having that organic feel. But this is an important piece to the puzzle here. Heard very much that this needs to be a walkable downtown. People need to be easily navigated to where they're going. And so an orientation map is something that does not currently exist that I've seen, but could be very helpful in that purpose. The other thing is we realize that there's a strong need to connect the fair with downtown. And so using this particular sign type to help bridge that connection by placing these down there by some of the gateways, or I'm sorry, the entry gates to the fair would be a good way to bridge that gap. When people leave the fair, they can look at these monuments here and they can see the orientation of downtown. They can get ideas of where to go as opposed to just going right back to the parking lots. The other opportunity for these pedestrian kiosks is that you have a lot of opportunities to present a lot of information in a very small area. Right now we're showing this as a two-sided, but it could be a four-sided kiosk. But on one side, you'd have the orientation map, but you could also communicate some interpretive information, maybe some Puyallup history. You could talk about events, celebrate the fair, Meeker Days, or whatever that's happening on that particular day or month. You could also feature Arts Downtown, having a location map that actually shows where all the prominent pieces of art are. So there's plenty of opportunities to share information, and it go a long way with also, showcasing some other destinations that you might not be able to put on a pedestrian directional or a vehicular directional. Then, of course, is the gateway. This will be the first thing that people will see if they're driving into the downtown area. So we want the gateway to reflect what we're doing with the wayfinding signage. So we're trying to keep some of that same language with the colors, the fonts, and of course the finials that we're showing up on top. But we also want to showcase some of the architectural elements that are around town, like the ironwork and the red brick. There's also an opportunity to showcase some more historical and cultural elements, like image panels on the base of these. You could do historic markers. And of course, you can celebrate the new brand and seasonal elements with the banners on the side. And being that it gets dark around 3:30, in the wintertime here, we wanted to, show a night simulation of what that would be if this was illuminated. And we wanted to have a presence during those hours too, when it's in the evening. So this is just a simulation to show what that might look like. Moving on to concept 2, community icon. This is all about celebrating the daffodil. And so what we're showing here is taking the daffodil, but doing more of a stylized, iconic approach for this. The sign itself is a little more traditional with an aluminum panel and a single post, but the decorative element and more fun, whimsical element is up top at the header, celebrating downtown and that daffodil. Same kind of approach to the back. If we wanted to bring in historical or cultural elements, we could have photographs on the back of that to do that. We took the parking and made it a little bit more fun, and taking the shape of that daffodil and celebrating that with on existing light posts or its own individual stem. But it's something that will be recognizable and unmistakable. Moving on to the pedestrian directional, similar idea. We have multiple fingered panels here, but celebrating that daffodil up top. And it could be a finial, it could be dimensional, or it could be just a flat disc. The pedestrian kiosk itself, this is more of a four-sided totem. It could be two-sided. depending on what's needed and what spot. But again, provides you the same opportunity as the last concept where you have your orientation map. You could, communicate history, interpretive elements, the events around downtown and arts downtown. And then here is the gateway concept for this. Again, bringing in some of those elements from the wayfinding, the stylized daffodil, a playful font. We wanted to bring in elements again from the architecture and elements from around downtown. So we included the light fixtures, the actual globes that are used on the current light fixtures that run along the street. Celebrating the tourism branding again with the banners, and bringing in some of the brick and ironwork as well. And here is the night simulation version of that. And so here's a little summary page. Again, we have two concepts. Concept one, the artistic branding element, and then concept two, community icon. So our next steps, we would love to get great feedback from you on these two concepts. The idea is that we can get feedback, take that feedback, make some refinements to a third concept and get that approved. And then from there, we'd move on to design development with all the sign types, not just the ones we're showing in concept. But the next steps, we'll begin working on streetscape enhancements that might support the gateways, do some prototype testing with the signage in the field so people can react to this. So we're including community outreach, and for our own studies too, just has to see how well this works and stands out in the environment. And that's it.
Okay. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great presentation, great design here. I'm gonna lean towards the first concept. I absolutely love everything about it. I like the opportunity of even creating different toppers to some of those with the, flower or hop or Ferris wheel for the fair or cowboy hat. I like that idea. Maybe even put them in certain areas of town to kind of create a district. I don't know, just an idea. I love the gateway entrance sign. I love how elegant it looks. I think it represents our city very well, and introduces anyone entering our city with a nice welcome approach. I love the brick. I love how the daffodils are lit up. I can't say enough about this. I absolutely love it. Great job. And if I had a golden buzzer, that would be it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not even close for me. It's clearly the artistic branding is the better of the two on multiple fronts, aesthetic wise, continuity, inviting. And it still captures some of our history. So it's not like we've lost it all. There still captures it, but it's just much better flow. I would and I love the archway. I would like to bring up to council a couple of things. I think if we're gonna look at the archway, we got to look at two, one north and one south. If we end up going with, a two-way street, we would want one coming this direction, not just this direction. And if we stay with one way, it'd still be nice to have one coming on either end. So say north and south, we should look at two of these. Second thing I would ask is the welcome to Puyallup should be illuminated. I don't know if it is in that concept, but that should be illuminated at night. And the last thing on the archway, I would really love to see if there's some technology for some LED lighting that could make something kind of cool. I don't know what that looks like. There's got to be some laser or LED lighting that could be something unusual that would just be a standard sign with a street light on it, something kind of interesting. So I would like us to think outside the box. In concept of design, I think it's great, but let's, before we put our stamp on it, can we at least see if there's some interesting lighting out there that might make that kind of attractive and eye-catching? Don't know what that is, but I know that maybe some big resorts have something like that. That would be very interesting. So that's only a thought on that, not a deal breaker. I love on the pedestrian kiosk. I really like that. If we're really trying to encourage walkability, signs are good to look at when you're driving by. But honestly, how many of us really read those signs when we're driving by? Not much. But folks that are getting out of their car and they're walking around with their families in the strollers. I love the kiosk. I think there should be a 4-way kiosk between 2 and 4. I think the 4 ways to go, really round that thing up with 4 different panels for people to go and see different things happening. So you get a little bit more square footage. There's not much more room to go ahead and add 2 extra panels, but you get larger print and some featured wayfinders for pedestrians to kind of get excited about. Maybe on one, you might advertise a summer schedule, or maybe some parks and rec things coming up, and just to have some different things you could announce and also wayfind. And then I think lastly, and again, it wasn't necessarily addressed here, and that's fine. Maybe it's a different place for this. But we have one of the top 10 largest fairs, literally less than 3 blocks away from the corner of this building. And yet it seems like it's an eternity away. There's no connectivity. You go 3 blocks this direction to the railroad tracks, it's very connected. But we go 3 blocks that direction, and it's like a distant world. Is there something that we could do to show the closeness of that, but yet a connectivity? I don't know what that is, but we really need to capture that. There needs to be that fair needs to connect with the downtown core with some wayfinding, something that's going to draw that in, because it's the Disneyland of our city. And if we're not really connecting that in a very genuine way, and not just knowing it's there, but actually visually and guiding us to pedestrian walk down there, engage, I don't know, but that's just a point of opportunity. Other than that, I think it's great. I'm looking forward to seeing some of this implemented sooner than later.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dean, for the presentation, and thank you to staff for taking our initial conversation back and putting it all together and bringing it back to us. I too like concept 1. My colleague here took all of my ideas out of my brain already. So my remarks will be brief. I do believe that we need 2 of the archways. I would like to see 2 on each end of Meridian. I think one, where, and as it relates to the fair and bringing the fair more into downtown, to me, it seems like it would be a good place to consider one of the arches just right off of 512, right outside or right south of the Blue Gate. I agree. I would be interested in some lighting options, whether that's solar. This is also, this is all encompassing. So whether it's, the directional or the posts, trying to incorporate solar into all of them, or as much as we can, to try to illuminate them in the evening is something that I would like to see. These small pedestrian directional signs that look very similar to what we currently have. I recognize that those are indeed for pedestrians, but just something about them I just don't like, and maybe it's because I can't see and I am constantly relying on my glasses. And otherwise, I think that these are really great. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole of the kiosks and what, I think the examples here, there's a lot of information on the kiosk examples. So I would just want to ensure that we're not jamming as much as we can onto the kiosk. Perhaps we look at increasing the number of kiosks, but I also would agree with my colleague here to my right that perhaps there is a way that we can earmark some of these kiosks to be interchangeable for our events and different seasons within the city. So this is very good. And again, I would like to see council and the city consider 2 archways. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. So I have a question about the panels. How easily interchangeable are they?
Are you talking about the entire system or the vehicular ones or?
I'm
all-
talking about the pedestrian kiosk panels. And
Oh, the kiosk panels, yes.
specifically, I'm looking at the downtown map. So you just have lines there. Do those lines represent businesses, or what did?
That just represents information. So like text that could go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I would not want to have, if they're not easily interchangeable and we're gonna put businesses on there, I want to make sure that when we get new businesses that we are able to.
Yeah, those lines are just meant to be just for visual representation of what could be there. It's information that can be easily swapped out.
Okay. So I too like concept 1. I think it's great. I like the different shapes. I like the artistic renderings on the back. And I agree with the 2 archways. I love the simplicity of this one at night and with the daffodils on top or whatever we choose. But I think that I love the daffodil outline. I think it's very classy, and I don't know, it's not even a question for me. I like number 1. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I would like to just a couple comments here on the small directional signs. You know, we have those right now in Puyallup, and they're actually really nice, but nobody looks at them. Okay, and so I don't anticipate when we go to this different type of directional sign on the small side, people are going to notice those anymore. Okay, you can convince me otherwise. Have anyone ever just put they do this on stop signs in certain locations. They actually put LEDs on them. Has anyone ever just on a little point, put one little red LED on each one of those points? I guarantee you, if you did that, we would notice it.
Yeah.
And the battery life on those things, those small LEDs, they last for, basically forever. And I can't imagine that's a hard technology that someone hasn't done it. So again, that's a way for you to notice those things, because I looked at the directional signs that we have around here. I thought, boy, those are really nice. I wonder why I've never noticed them.
Yeah. And so when we first started this project, we were researching those current signs that, you folks have been mentioning previously. And one of the reasons why it's hard to read them is because they're pedestrian directionals placed at vehicular height. So that's part of the reason why. So when they're so high up, it makes it hard. You're walking around and you're looking up and the font's really small. So that was part of the reason why some of the current signs are easy to miss.
Okay, well, that's a good explanation. Nevertheless, think about that LED, see if that is been proven to be to increase visibility. The other thing is I do like concept 1, but I'm wondering, it's rather plain in the ornateness, except on the banner that goes across the street. That is more ornate, what you see in there. But if you'll notice the supports of the banners on the side, the concept number 2 has more of an ornate support that goes on that. And here's my concern. And do you understand what I'm saying, Dean?
Are you referring to the gateway banners?
Yeah, well, I'm referring to all of if you look at a banner or a support, you just have basically a very simple support that comes up in like kind of a quarter moon, so to speak. On the other one, you have a curve. Okay, it curls. Okay, yeah. It's more ornate, and I say that because if you look at our streetlights in our city, if you look at the benches, if you look at the other things, they're more ornate. And what you did in concept number 1, it's all very simple. It even looks a little bit more modern. And I'm just wondering, I'm not going to argue against it because I still think it looks very classy. But the point is that compatible with the motif we've kind of already chosen for our city? Because we've got these beautiful street lights that are kind of your 1890s gaslight replicas, except they're electricity, of course. You've got that kind of a ornate look, and that you have got this kind of modern sort of support on our kiosk, as opposed to the slight stylistic ornate aspects. And I'm just going to ask you, was there a purpose behind that? Was that, if not, I just would ask you to consider it, not being such a design fiend that I, would make myself out to be here.
Yes, but I'm sorry. Okay, Ted.
No, go for it.
Yes, it was purposeful. One, I think I mentioned early on, we presented 4 concepts. So we wanted to make them all very distinct from each other. And so once these were refined down to 2, we still wanted these to be distinct from each other, just so we could have this conversation. What are the elements that you like of each? This one was purposely designed to be more modern, more contemporary. And I think, the furnishings discussion happens next. That's part of that, when we start developing the furniture and things like that around town, some of those things could then adapt to what we're doing for the wayfinding. So there is that connection. So it doesn't feel like the wayfinding system is all on its own. But again, option 2 captures some of that ornateness. And if you like the ornateness from option 2, then maybe we can bring some of that back into option 1. So there's a connection with all those elements.
Well, I'm going to give my vote there. I just think that the more classic elements are much more ageless. Otherwise, you don't think that that modern thing is ever going to go out of style. I guarantee you, people in years forward may look at that and go, oh, that's what they were doing back in 2020. And I would rather keep them guessing and have something that was far more classic. I just think that age is much better. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. So if we're going to integrate a more classic ornateness, because the next discussion on the benches and things of that sort, that's what I will argue, is that we look more classic and let our art and other things speak to a more modern time. So anyway, enough said. Councilmember Adler, or Deputy Mayor King, I apologize.
Jeez.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm kidding. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For round 2, just wanted to also mention as a food for thought is if we do end up going to a 2-way street down the road, no pun intended, will these signs be allowed to be double-sided? Because we would need to have that adjustment as well, depending on when these actually get installed. Will we be able to add to them, so to speak? So just keep that in the back of your mind, because right now we obviously have a 1-way down Meridian. We are possibly looking at turning it into a 2-way. So just as a food for thought, I don't know what that's going to end up. We don't know what the results are going to be. So just as an idea there. I do like the mayor's idea to add LED lights as bullet points to those signs. It will gain additional attention. Also, just because of the low power of those, obviously solar would be a great option for that, to where it would just last forever at that point. And I concur. I believe that we do need to have the 2 entry gateway signs, one to the north, one to the south, for those entering and exiting our downtown. And just as another, I'm just going to throw this out there. I like the toppers. I like the different ideas other than just the daffodil. I would like to petition the council as a thought, and we don't need to discuss it here, but just a food for thought, creating some sort of memorable, fun district areas within our city. Have our downtown district, our fair district, our river district, uptown district, farm district, Meeker district, Pinehurst. I'm just naming names just to come up with names, but just as an idea, just to create some sort of identity to each part of our city. So thank you very much, and I'll let this one go.
Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to highlight for staff reference, perhaps this will be helpful to you, perhaps not. I would actually bet that you likely already know this or have referenced it and researched it. So our transit system here in this area is doing some upgrading and updates thanks to some federal earmarks that will be across all of the bus stops in the service area. They will be solar powered, all of their signs. So, you know, I think that there are some really good opportunities and vendors out there for us to work with. The other thing that keeps coming to mind is the fair back in the day, which wasn't that long ago. It's rich me saying that. And you can kind of still see it on the fairgrounds. And it's just something to think about. And it keeps coming up in my mind. Like I said, if you look throughout the fairgrounds, they have different lines on the pavement, right? Or there's like duck feet or cow hooves, and they're color coordinated. And if once upon a time you followed them, it would get you where you want to go. I'm not necessarily advocating that we start, you know, striping the downtown here, but I think that that's a really interesting concept to consider as we think about wayfinding. So, and it kind of, you know, relates to what Councilmember King was just speaking about potential districts. So I just wanted to flag that. Thank you very much.
Okay, we keep going here. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was thinking, you know, until we come up with some kind of a unique opportunity that will create a master corridor between the city, you know, building, you know, or, you know, all the way down to the fair. Because it would be expensive to widen sidewalks, whatever that is, to connect that. But I wonder if there could be an inexpensive way, maybe again, it's a little bit outside the scope of this, perhaps, I don't know. But is there some creative lighting that would connect, let's say, the edge of our downtown core, say around the city building, all the way down to the fair, that would kind of create this sense of connectivity until maybe a more major, you know, road or sidewalk effort came up down the road? Any way to connect that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. One comment, I just want to make sure we are not forgetting north of the tracks. They often do feel like they are not part of the downtown core. So I want to make sure we're including them. And then to Deputy Mayor King's point, I do like the little toppers, and maybe, I guess it's also to Councilmember Adler's point, maybe that is the thing that they follow, is the topper. So it's subtle, but yet still there to get where they're going. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Dorr. And actually, I took from what Councilmember Adler said, the idea of having little markers in the sidewalk. Whether, I mean, I think there could be some really creative things like little wagons that would be made of, you know, copper or something like that, that are embedded and you follow. Something that would be, I mean, that's kind of a cool idea. I really like that. I think that's worth working with. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Kessler. So I'm just curious, visibility is a big deal, right? So the LED lights, the toppers are a really cool concept, but also even the color scheme. If we're going districts, I think we might need to consider the signage being in a color scheme. So we don't have to worry about the streets or, you know, like, let's just keep it all on our project. So that was just, anyway, I love this whole thing. Forgive me. Let me back up. I really like the artistic design. That is what I'm looking at. And I don't mean to sound negative in any way, but what pulled me away from the other design was it was too much daffodil. So I like the variety of expression of Puyallup. But if we're gonna try to help our people or guests into Puyallup, anybody navigate through districts, I really recommend a color-coded district. Because I think the symbols on top might just be a little bit too small to recognize. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, hearing none. Dean, are you staying over for the next presentation?
I'll be observing. I am not presenting.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, with that, we're going to move on to 7D, Downtown Street Furnishing Standards. Eric, Oh, and Nathan's coming back. Okay,
We're actually going to have Justin Martin from MIG will be giving that presentation. So,
okay. Well, Eric, you take it away.
yep. So Eric Johnson, City Public Affairs Officer, and here to introduce Justin Martin with MIG, who will be giving us an update on the downtown street furnishings standards. So I'm going to pass it off to Justin Martin, who will give us a presentation.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Council. Let me just give me 1 second to get my screen shared here. All right. Oops. Sorry about this. Too many windows around. There we go. Should be visible now. Thank you, folks. Today, this evening, following on our other discussions about downtown elements, we're going to be talking about a downtown street furnishings project. In this project, we are looking at some new standards and options for standards for street furnishings for the downtown area. So I'll just to walk you through what we'll be going through this evening. I will go over kind of our project scope and background, take a quick look at the existing kind of most common typical street furnishings that we're seeing downtown right now, look through where the locations are, where we'd be actually looking at using standard street furnishings. And then we'll go through 3 themes that we've developed. We developed a few more options initially, and then refined those down to 3 themes that we'll present tonight for discussion. Lastly, we have a couple of slides where we can compare all 3 themes and look briefly at costs, and then get into next steps and discussion. All right, so just trying to move this little box here. There we go. So similar to the Meeker Festival Street, this project kind of came about as one of the projects identified through the Meridian Streetscapes project, which really looked at a variety of opportunities for the improvements downtown and along the Meridian corridor, to kind of help rebrand, improve the kind of downtown street area and encourage economic development in the downtown area. So this project was identified as one of the quick win type projects, and so it's a relatively short project. So we'll be coming tonight with some options, and then circling back to refine those down, and coming back with some final recommendations. So the goals of this project, again, are to provide some design guidance and help the city identify a set of street furnishings that reflect the character and the quality of downtown Puyallup, and identifying a set of furnishings that build on the city's unique downtown character. We're also looking at developing a set of standard, kind of a standard palette of furnishings, so that as furnishings downtown are replaced through improvement projects or repairs, we're seeing kind of a more uniform set of furnishings going in down there. And this is, I should say, in large part, right now what's typical, and we'll see an image in a minute, is the those concrete benches and planters at most of the corner intersections, but those are slowly kind of disappearing as they get broken. And so I think finding something that's more kind of off the shelf and not custom that is going to be easier to replace over time. And so again, that kind of goes to this reducing the maintenance demands on the public works staff. It's easier for them to find replacements, put those in place when the need arises and things are available. So just taking a quick look at what's down there currently. These are kind of highlighting just the typical street furnishings. Bike rack, there are many of them, but they tend to be a pretty kind of just simple U style or staple style rack. Waste receptacles. In the center, we have those typical concrete benches and planters. Some of the planters have caps on them, so they just kind of more of a plinth. And then those are typically at, you can see just on the side, this kind of specialty paving with the daffodil pattern. I know those are repainted fairly regularly. But I think both the planters as well as the paving have been often affected both by traffic collisions in some cases, but also in many cases damage from the tree roots. So in any case, putting other furnishings in place of these that are consistent and kind of also provide a unique but consistent aesthetic in downtown is going to be one of the aims of the project. Again, for now, what's been typically going in many cases where a bench is wanted downtown are these green park benches. So that's one thing that's down there. And then the street light poles. And so we're not specifically looking at light poles. And obviously you just heard about the wayfinding project. And I think that's more, the poles are more of a focus in that project overall. But anyway, just good to know about those being down there. So just spatial considerations where we're talking about plan view of a typical street corner. Most of the downtown street corners have this kind of bulb out area with a tree on either side of the corner. The red benches are representing where those concrete benches currently are and where we'd propose most likely having those benches, the newer benches replacing those. And then optionally flanking those with raised planters. And then this upper corner here shows, another approach that can be used. As I said, there's been quite a bit of pavement damage. Some of the trees have been removed. Some are, will need to be removed for tree health reasons. But the tree replacement also presents an opportunity to replace the paving and put in potentially soil cells that will both support tree health in the future, while at the same time helping protect the pavement from damage, and reducing the size of the planter opening, which presents opportunity for more space for street furnishings as well. Then we're also showing there are opportunities for furnishings along the frontages of the buildings. That the sidewalks are relatively narrow on most blocks, and so there's not a lot of space to put those. We're not suggesting that these are going to be mandatory or anything for businesses to use, but certainly the standard furnishings, while primarily for use by the city and putting them in the public realm, could be an option for frontage improvements if people wanted to use those, such as in this case where you might use a street furnishing in the kind of setback entryways that are fairly common downtown. Here's just another example. One of the options we'll be looking at is potentially providing more of a table and chair setup that could be used in some locations. We don't think that should be used everywhere necessarily, but it's a nice option to have available. And again, could be used in the setbacks or kind of a cafe space as well if that was desired by folks. So we'll get into the three options. The first of the three, we're calling the historic welcoming town center. Just kind of reflective of the kind of classic style of the downtown area. A lot of older buildings. You have the Meeker Mansion, obviously, and this kind of friendly small town feel, and with at the same time a lot of these decorative elements like the light poles and then even the clock, and kind of helping define the downtown feel. So this palette, we've selected a range of furnishings, and for each of these themes, we'll just kind of look at one option for a bench, another option for table and chairs, a bike rack, waste receptacles, and planters. So, this one again kind of focuses on that classic and timeless feel to the furnishings, and the benches have the wood slats, kind of a classic curved arm. The option for the kind of table and chairs in this one would be simply just a shorter, narrower bench, simple bike rack. There aren't currently, like I said, very many bike racks, so there may be an opportunity to add some bike parking in various areas downtown. Waste receptacles, and again, these could come in various colors, but you could have them for trash or trash and recycling, and just a pretty classic looking steel planter. The next option really builds on the agrarian roots of Puyallup and the fertile legacy of the valley and the kind of historic farming tradition where the city grew up around, the hops and the moving into flowers and daffodils, fruit, other sort of things. So again, still fairly kind of classic styling, but I think a little more, perhaps a little more playful, and evoking that, things sprouting, growing, bountiful. I think this actually, I particularly this bench, but these I think tie in nicely with the artistic theme that Dean was previously describing with the for the wayfinding options. So table and chairs, these ones are nice. They provide a little bit more movable options. I have seen these used in the public realm elsewhere, where the same model, the table can be anchored to the ground, and then the chairs can be cabled to the table in a way that they're movable but don't walk off, and they're all very heavy duty. This one we also looked at an option to kind of have like a more of a bar, like a bar table, and it might be an interesting option for spaces that are this kind of narrow, more linear spaces, or even without the seating adjacent to it, could be a space people can kind of walk up, set down their coffee and chat together. Bike racks, these are nice. They come in a variety of colors, and we kind of chose a more floral theme here for the what we're showing, but these can be totally customized, so we could come up with a different design that these would be kind of unique to the city. Waste receptacles with more of a vegetative theme on the sides, and then these steel planters that come in a variety of sizes, which is nice for kind of the flexibility in different locations along the streetscape. And the third theme is this artisanal, natural, handcrafted. So again, a nod to this kind of the things that are made and built and crafted, and the farmers market and the state fair, all these things being produced here, and so really focusing more on kind of the wood, the parts, the flexibility. The bench again, kind of wood slats, but more of the vertical feel, the table and chairs, also with wood on these ones, they're kind of fun because they swivel, so you can kind of be facing, you know, to the sidewalk or to the table for conversation across the table. Again, there's a higher option for both the table and the chairs on those ones. Kind of the more the bar height, could use the table with or without seating next to it. Bike rack from a local producer just up in Woodinville. And kind of a classic waste receptacle. And lastly, the planters with wood framing finish. So those do come in a couple of sizes, but are typically square, so a little more constrained on the sizing for those than the last option. But so just kind of have a slide here to put it all together for comparison. And I think you have this in your packets, or we could jump back to it later, but kind of helpful to see everything side by side. And then just, you know, one of the factors is obviously cost. You know, the staff were, you know, interested that we keep an eye on this. I think, you know, we did pass up a few options that were just a little more on the expensive side. Didn't seem very practical. So I think things are all within a, you know, pretty reasonable range here for public street furniture. You know, I think we're also aiming to not find the very least expensive options that ultimately are just going to cost more through the need for maintenance and replacement because they're less durable. So next steps, as I said, we're, you know, coming with the options. We'd love your feedback on just kind of the themes and as well as the, you know, palettes or individual furnishings that you're seeing here. Our next steps are to refine these down to a single theme with a, you know, a preferred set of furnishings that the city could use as a standard throughout downtown. And then we're going to be working, here's an example graphic on the right, but working to just kind of refine, you know, something similar to what I showed before, but looking at, you know, kind of the typical spaces where these would go. You know, this graphic obviously is showing mostly the smaller tree pit size and different plantings, but that's one of the things we'll look at a bit in that effort as well. All right, well, thank you for your time, and I will stop here to listen to thoughts and feedback.
Okay, Justin, why don't you back up and go to the comparisons?
Sure,
Where
I can do
you
that.
kind of a simple, okay, we'll go ahead and take comments from everybody. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All three had some attributes, but I think overall clarity for me, it was historic option A seemed to be across the board consistent. A couple of feedbacks. I especially like the trash can style, just with the cover on the top, and it just seems like aesthetically very nice. I really like the three chair table concept. I'd actually like to eliminate benches in our downtown core on those narrow you know, areas. Let's just think about it through this way. Typically, I've never seen usually more than two people sitting in a bench. Very rarely you might get three because you can only fit about three in there anyway. So really, they're just chairs for two. I'd love to see a hybrid instead of a bench, maybe having two chairs side by side with a swivel. So if we're watching an event, you're looking, you know, at down the street, you can certainly see that. But if it had a swivel, you could actually turn to each other and actually talk to each other like you're sitting around a cafe table. And so to have kind of maybe two chairs rather than a bench would be nice in those narrow areas that had a swivel, so you could actually have coffee, communicate, connect. I know when I sit with my wife, when I go to a restaurant, I don't want to sit next to her. I usually want to sit across from her. Now, the only time I have a conversation with her side by side is in the car. But other than that, if we're going to be sitting somewhere, I want to be able to talk with somebody. And so to sit on a bench and then look at the street and then talk to each other is very odd. And then plus we've had some people that don't want to necessarily sit in the benches. They usually want to do other things like take a nap or whatever, which is fine. There's nice lawn for that if you want to take a nap and lay down. So I think really having, if they're intended to be sitting, then having a couple chairs that had swivels and going side by side would be better. But I really, really love the, if there's room on the A theme, this Homestead Series post table, super cool with a three-way. I would even suggest a fourth chair where those chairs look like they're stationary, so you can actually anchor them down so they're not gonna get slid around or stolen. And sitting around and really talking. It's really, if you think about it, council, it's kind of like the parklets, right? People can go and publicly sit down and have a cup of coffee, have a sandwich, whatever, and have a good conversation. So I really, really like those a lot. One option that I did like on, it could be a hybrid, is in option C. I kind of liked that in place of the bench. So if we were to take that concept with a table in between, right? Using the historic theme, but have a couple of chairs at the table with that table right in the middle. So rather than that third seat, being a third person, have a table in the center with the benches that, kind of two chairs that they would just rotate either way. So you could visit, put your coffee down or turn it back to the street and watch the parade come down. So those are some thoughts I thought about that I think would be really helpful. The last thing is I really like the wood concept, but I almost wonder if all metal wouldn't be better just for maintenance. I think the wood looks great when it's new, but after 5, 6, 7, 8 years, what's it going to look like and all that? So if we had this framers modern option A, but have metal grates, I wonder if it would last longer. You could be painted or whatever with Rust-Oleum or whatever you do to keep it looking fresh or change the color theme versus wood might look kind of pale. But other than that, I really like the options, and I hope there's some other comments that might further give clarity to this.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. I would just be interested, sorry, Ken, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Public Works has to maintain these things, so I would be interested in their perspective because I can see, are these actual real wood? Because I can see them being carved on, like we're trying to do our
Yeah, so there's a number of different options for the wood and potentially wood like surfaces, so they're not actually wood, but they have a wood texture to them. So there are options within, but then we get into what that price range also looks like too. So
okay, so that would, can you talk about just the maintenance for your staff on this?
Yeah, so we did discuss the wood option. It definitely ages poorly for the weather. No matter what type of oil that we've tried to use in a wood option, we always end up with aged, so wood. To Dean's point, when we have a metal surface, it's easier for us to maintain.
And as far as, we just had a conversation last week about the signal wraps and graffiti and things like that. Is the metal easier for you to address those types of issues, or can it be graffiti proofed? I have no idea what they come in.
Oh yeah, we have material that aids us when we're removing graffiti on a metal. So, but definitely in the wood we could also remove as well.
Yeah, I have a wood bench at home, and I don't know that it probably should be in the trash by now because it just splinters and it is tough to maintain. So I do agree with the metal aspect if we can make it look attractive.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just thought I would go on record and say that I do like option A, historic welcoming town center. I think that I would like to see and echo my colleagues' comments regarding the metal. I am interested, and I will take this offline, but I'll just share my hope that with staff, I can get an update on how we're going about this. Are we replacing everything? Are we going to add? Are we going to subtract? I am thinking about perhaps a future opportunity of adding over on the corner of 2nd and Pioneer, right outside of the splash pad. If we can, that's something that is on the horizon or can be talked about in the future. Thank you very much. This is great.
Councilmember King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do like option A, historic welcoming town center. I believe that there are numerous options with composite materials that allow for a wood look that would work well with that furniture. I'm sure you guys are fully aware of that. Obviously, the metal is easier to repair or what have you. However, I think that if we choose the right materials, right bench, right everything, I don't think we're going to see as much damage to those as we think. Obviously, no matter what we choose, there will be damage, there will be graffiti. But I think that the look will outweigh the repair for our downtown. I think we should really focus on that that feel of historic, welcoming warmth that these wood type benches would give us throughout our downtown. The metal seems a little cold physically and visually. But I think that the composite style wood benches would accomplish what we need to get across for our downtown. So that's all I have for you. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Kestema. I was just going back and looking at our downtown branding and the artistic design, and I thought that the most complementary is the historical, modern looking historical. What do we have here? The option A. So I was just kind of paralleling them, and and then I also, being part of the Main Street Association board, they were commenting, I hope I'm quoting them correctly, but that Ironside series of Victory Stanley appears to be car accident proof. So if anybody runs into one of those with their car, it actually is pretty darn durable. So if we're looking at durability and biggest bang for our buck, that's where my thoughts go. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me provide my thoughts that will go around to Councilmember Johnson. I too like the historic option. And first of all, I think that it's more compatible with what we currently have, the clock downtown, all the street lights. I also think it's compatible even with our current benches. I mean, more compatible certainly than these others. And as we integrate it in, it won't look out of place with what we currently have. I think it'll look, in fact, somewhat harmonious, compared to them. I also tend to think that it's nice to have things that aren't jarring, but instead that are very classic, because our town prizes itself on our art that we put throughout our community. In fact, it was pioneered right here. Rosemary Eckerson was very much part of pioneering this idea of bringing arts downtown that's been copied by everyone else. So I'd like to let our art, which sometimes is very modern and contemporary, let it speak, and then let all of the furnishings kind of be in the backdrop, as you would see in Paris, for example, where they had this just very beautiful, kind of classic, ornate light post benches, those types of things. But of course, it's the city of light, and there's all kinds of art that tends to get accented very well. I was very interested in the comment by Councilmember Johnson about going away from just a plain bench. I mean, I think that's worth exploring, that idea of maybe having, stationary facing, or at least maybe diagonally opposed benches. I say that because I noticed at this week's weekend's farmers market that these chess tables that we have down here were just loaded with people conversing across from each other. Now, I didn't see chess pieces, so I'd like to see chess pieces, but The point was, is people like to sit and they like to converse with each other, and it was just more of an intimate environment. So I think it's worth looking at. I guess I would like to see if other communities have experimented with that and what type of luck they've had. So with that, Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, good point, Mayor. I like you too, was walking through and I did see a lot of people on those, circular bench tables, because again, it's communal. You can see different angles and you can talk across the table from people and it creates a sense of community. So it's fantastic. I'd like to follow up. Deputy Mayor made up a good point, and I think I was initially against the wood if it was natural wood, but I would be open to that wood concept. In keeping with that warmer theme, I do think that wood is kind of a warmer theme, but if it's natural wood, we just know that's going to be a headache. And I think our staff has let us know that. But if there was a way, like, for example, I know when my deck, I have this kind of a composite deck. And I think we had this deck out there for quite a few years, maybe 6, 7, 8 years, and it finally got pretty old. And it was really simple. We just simply unscrewed the boards off and screwed some new ones down, the same deal. So if there was a way on these to replace these every, whatever, 5, 6 years with just a what do you call it? Engineered wood or whatever. So it has that warm look. And it's simple to, drill them in, take them in and out without having to refinish them. That would be fantastic. I'd be open to that. So thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, we'll go ahead. We'll move on. Thank you very much for the presentation. Did we give you what you needed? Okay, excellent. Okay, now we're going to move on to the city manager's report, and then we'll go into reports from each council member. City manager, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Castema and council members. A few items. Your agenda for May 7th, so there's no meeting next week. The agenda for May 7th will have 2 substantive items on it at this point. One will be on the potential incentives for sanitary sewer extensions. This is something that the city engineer had mentioned in the presentation last in the study session. So this will be talking about some potential items to look at in terms of our sanitary sewer and some incentives. Then there will also be a presentation on the comprehensive plan and an overview of the status of that and some key provisions within the comp plan that you'll be reviewing over the next few months. And then just one quick announcement. I want to congratulate Ray Cockrum, who's our building code official. Ray was elected the president of the Washington Association of Building Officials, which is the statewide organization. Ray's moved up in terms of the different positions. And so this last week, he was elected the president of that statewide association. Ray's been with the city for several years as our building code official. So congratulations to Ray, who's also a District 1 Puyallup resident. So that is the extent of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, city manager. Let's start with Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I'm gonna try and be efficient. Because in light of the strategic plan and how we're moving towards that, I really wanted to do a shout out to our city staff on the agenda because I looked at the bottom of each item and which strategic plan it played into is highlighted at the bottom. So if there are any constituents that are looking to pay attention on what's going on with the city, you can tell which goal the staff is trying to work towards. So I just wanted to do a quick shout out for that because I was really appreciative of that. So great job. A huge shout out to Mayor Castema and I want to say Nikki Gould, who inspired the Meeker Days city booth to be at the very first farmers market, not Meeker Days, please forgive me. Our first farmers market event. Nikki Gould had met with Mayor Castema and inspired the city booth to be at the farmers market, and I had the opportunity to be there with them for a little bit and in hearing the heart of our constituents. So thank you, city staff, for helping making that happen. Thank you, Nikki Gould, for inspiring that. And thank you, Mayor Castema, for toughing it out the whole time. I was only there for 2 hours. You were there the whole time. So good job. The Main Street Association in general is a rock star at bringing people into our community. So it was really fun to watch the farmers market explode on Saturday. If anybody is interested, there's a thing called a patron tour for the Puyallup School District. May 7th, they're doing Region 2, which is Rogers High School, Bellew Junior High, and Zager Elementary tour. But on June 5th, they're doing Region 3, which is Puyallup High School, Callison, and Maplewood. So you can take a tour and see what our school district is up to on behalf of our students. And then I'd like to do a shout out for the Meeker Mansion. This last Saturday, they had a cellar to attic tour. But they have some big things on the horizon for the cultural center vision that they have. And one of the things I'm really impressed with Meeker Mansion, we're very rooted in our pioneer history. But with the cultural center, they're looking at how do we bring what's currently happening, like our current culture vibe in Puyallup to life. And so it's not just a pioneer history perspective, but it's what is represented in Puyallup now. So I'm really impressed with how the vision of that and what they're hoping to accomplish there. So with that, I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to pass.
Okay, we're going to go. Sorry, I'm just trying to mix things up. Councilmember Whitting.
I'd like to just piggyback on Councilmember Gilliam's comments about the tour for the Puyallup School District. I went on one of those today. We toured Emerald Ridge High School, Ferrucci Junior High, and Wildwood Park Elementary. But what I found really interesting was we also toured the Kessler Center along with the print shop, the Food Services Center, and the Ed Tech Center. And it was really interesting to see the behind the scenes things going on there. So, and but also to hear the work that they're doing to help our kids, overcome some of the challenges that they face. So there's a lot of good work being done by the school district, and I encourage folks to participate in those and learn more about what's going on, so we can support our school system in the way we would like. I would also like to focus today on the county's efforts to form a unified regional authority. And I sent out an email to my colleagues this past week about a meeting I attended last Friday, where they talked about setting up a unified regional authority on homelessness. The county has budgeted $1 million to do that. They are currently working on a request for proposal to in that concern. So if we are to have input into that RFP, we need to respond fairly quickly. So I've solicited comments from my colleagues and wanted to kind of make this a public offer as well. Anybody that has thoughts about a unified regional authority, I'd be happy to receive them and to pass them on and express our community interests in working on this very serious problem throughout the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things, particularly because I missed last week's study session, which I apologize for. I was in Washington, D.C. and for 2 weeks, and I am still on East Coast time. So I apologize that some of my words probably are not coming as quickly as they usually do. I was in Washington, D.C. for my day job, but what I did find myself thinking is that the city of Puyallup has a real opportunity to engage with our congressional delegation and begin considering ways in which we can partner with the delegation to bring home some federal dollars and begin to engage in conversation regarding ways that, similar to the way that the 25th Legislative District delegation delivers for us in the state budgets, and particularly capital dollars, there is that opportunity now with our congressional delegation, which are sometimes referred to as earmarks, which have returned and really do provide a terrific opportunity for us. So I hope that my colleagues here will indulge me and want to engage in conversations and projects that perhaps we can go after federal funding for. I appreciate my colleagues' patience while I was out, and appreciate the time now. So I would be remiss as the resident Swiftie if I did not talk about the Tay Tour that happened on Friday, the 19th, here in Puyallup. And just real quickly, I would be remiss if I did not highlight a couple things that I really think are important. And I'm going to hope that in a time in the near future, we can actually get a glimpse into the economic impact that that event had on downtown Puyallup, because it was, I'm going to bet, significant. Thank you to the Main Street Association for being a sponsor of this event. I also would like to thank Puyallup resident Morgan Medeiros of Nutrition. This was really her brainchild. And you know, she is a business owner. She hadn't really engaged in the community or in the city aside from just growing up here and being a resident, but she went to Main Street, brought this idea forward, and off it went. And I think that that is also a real terrific testament to the way that you know, Puyallup and Main Street just is open to ideas, and let's try it. You know, I participated with my 9-year-old niece, her best friend, my sister, and some other folks, and every single business that I visited had a line out the door. And I think, you know, we have Mother Nature to thank for some really terrific weather, which I think helped bring folks out. But, you know, this was really something. As Carrie mentioned during public comment, you know, NPR quickly highlighted our town in celebrating the Tortured Poets Department, which was the album released on Friday. Hits 106.1 FM highlighted the event. Como and King did live hits downtown, which is pretty impressive. I think that the two biggest noteworthy, you know, data points that stood out to me are Atomic Genius Records. Beth, I think is her name. She told me that she had like 26 copies of the Tortured Poets Department vinyl come in. And she had like 18 or 19 reserved. And the balance of the records that she had on sale went in 25 minutes. I mean, it just went like almost, I think it's like just under 3 minutes a copy, which is really wild. And she was really appreciative of that because you know, she had been waiting for Record Store Day, but this was even a better boost of revenue. And then finally, the Mercantile, Meeker Mercantile, I have known for a while that their number one selling products are all products that have something to do with Taylor Swift. They had said that the event on Friday was their biggest day yet. And so there is something very special about Taylor Swift. I mean, I can speak for myself and say, you know, the amount of money that I have spent on things related to Taylor Swift is, you know, I could probably buy another house. So thank you to everyone that was involved. It was very heartening and a very exciting evening. And I hope that our businesses felt like that was well worth their time and amid the craziness. So thank you very much.
Thank you. By the way, you were excused at our last meeting. I made sure that was the case. And Taylor Swift is welcome anytime here. I don't know how busy she is, but you know, I would like to send a formal invitation. She would like to come to Puyallup. I think that would be pretty cool. Let's go with Councilmember Johnson. I see your name is up here. Deputy Mayor King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna have to figure out who this Taylor Swift is. I don't know who she is or She's dating some guy that plays sport ball or something. I don't. Some guy. I don't know. I'm kidding.
Go sports.
Goes football. It's not sport ball. I'm just teasing. Great weekend. Great farmers market. Record turnout. Always a great time there. Looks like I'll have to catch the next Swifty tour through Puyallup and have Lauren share with me what all of this ridiculousness is all about. But just recapping regarding the fair noise, I did also have a personal experience with this, and my daughter, who was sitting outside of Starbucks right outside conversing with some friends, had to actually relocate during this time because they couldn't even converse outside of the fair. And so I appreciate the fair's willingness to adjust their next weekend, if that were the case, to be able to take care of this noise incident. And I'm sure it was not done with any ill will. It just wasn't thought about through that. So thank you for the opportunity for the fair to address that. Over the weekend, past 2 weekends actually, I've visited Clark's Creek North and partaked in some pickleball with the family and brought the whole family out there, even got the grandparents out there playing, and no knees were broken and no elbows were skinned, but not yet, that is for sure. It got pretty competitive, but it was a great great time with ages 8 to I think 73. Don't tell them I forgot. But anyway, it was a great time and great use of the pickleball courts that have been put out there, and looking forward to visiting the rec center on the new courts out there here shortly. But I think I've become a fan of pickleball. So
I thought you were gonna say Taylor Swift.
who's Taylor Swift again? No.
Okay, folks, I'm gonna have to separate you two. Okay, I just have very brief comments. I want to just remind people, oh, pardon me. Oh, Councilmember Dorr, I apologize. Please proceed.
So I think that you two are gonna get a playlist from Councilmember Adler soon.
I hope so.
So I just very briefly, Ording Valley Fire and Rescue and Graham Fire and Rescue approved their petitions for merger with Central Pierce. The next steps in the process are that Ording and Graham are to submit their environmental checklist. And then they go through a SEPA process, a much scaled down process from what we have. But those are the next things. And once they get their SEPA process done, they send the determination to the state date. They have to survey their boundaries and they go to Boundary Review Board. So with that, thank you.
I apologize, Councilmember Dorr. Won't happen again. I'll keep my comments very brief. You've already heard that last weekend was really quite a success at Farmers Market. Farmers Market will take place again. The Master Gardeners out at WSU are having their annual plant sale. And if you're at all interested in plants, you got to get out there because they go lightning fast. There are hundreds and hundreds of people that show up at that. It's a huge annual event. I remind you that 50 years ago, the actual Master Gardeners program that's worldwide started right here in Puyallup at the Washington State University Research Extension Center here in Puyallup. Big thing. I want to just compliment everyone here. You need to hear this, that when I was at the farmers market, I just put up a little booth and I just talked to people. And I have to tell you, I must have talked to, 100 plus people. And I'm just being honest with you. I didn't hear a negative comment about Puyallup. I heard person after person say that they love this community, that they think it's well managed, They think that we have good leadership. And I look around, I have got senior leadership with their wisdom, and I've got young people who have come on board and with all their spontaneity and energy. It is a very good combination, and I believe that it is being noticed. I have a whole list of stop sign requests and these types of things from the individuals who were there. But all in all, I even had people come up to me and say, see, I told you Puyallup would be the place to be. And, I think all the work that us and previous councils have put in place and have worked very hard with all of our focus on parks, safe community, family-focused environments, good library. I even had someone who moved here, just bought a house a couple blocks away, and they said to me, we need a program for our teen. We have 2 teens. And I just at that point said, have I got a thing for you? The library has a new teen center going in. So it was just like clockwork. It was fantastic. So I just want to leave by saying thank you. What you do as leaders in this community is very well noticed. It's making a tangible difference. With that, thank you all for being here. Thank the audience. We'll adjourn.